Are we live? Can everybody see me? Can everybody hear me? Are we live? Can everybody see me? That's the problem. Fucking Twitch was the problem. Alright, cool. Well, now I know. So. The iPad is showing that I've got 3 people watching right now. Hopefully that's the case. I'm not just sitting here talking to myself. Not that it'll be the first time, or the last. So, I am gonna say, go ahead and crack on, shall we? Give me just 1 second to get a drink. And let us proceed. London, 1872. I've entered into the service of a new gentleman. It would seem he is a gambling man. Sure everything seems to be working all right. Hopefully everyone out there can hear me. Well, I just gotten a friend request, so at least somebody can see me. That's nice. Alright, Gator Queen in the chat says it seems to be, so that's good. So, here we are, beginning in London. And if the game is louder than I am, let me know. I will do my best to tweak it. Yeah, okay, I thought that might be the case. Just a second. Yeah, try turning the game down a little in OBS. Go into the game settings and try to tweak things a little. See if that does any better. And again, if it's too loud, let me know. I will tweak it again. This is my second Twitch stream. I want to make sure I get everything right. So, let us begin. Monsieur Phileas Fogg returned home early from the Reform Club, and in a newfangled steam carriage besides. I helped him down, and the iron-lunged, steam-driven horses clattered away. Passepartout, he said, we are going around the world. Around the world, monsieur? I asked, utterly astonished. We shall circumnavigate the globe within 80 days. He was quite calm as he proposed this wild scheme. We leave for Paris on the 8:25 in an hour. This was a shocking turnabout for my master, who was, by all accounts, a creature of inflexible habit and mechanical regularity. Perhaps the carriage's engine fumes had affected his reason. For Paris, monsieur? To begin with, yes. Pack an altimeter in my evening jacket. There's not a moment to waste. You, Passepartout, now have funds. Me! The mic is as high as it can go on OBS right now. So if I need to turn it down a little, I'll have to do that. I have to turn down the game volume. I can't really turn myself up anymore, unfortunately. Pardon me. I can try to boost the gain on my mic, though. Just a little. Hopefully that did something. New routes discovered. But he said to make sure we have an altimeter. And I would say we should probably take the shipping timetable. And the playing cards. Probably won't hurt. and we begin with 4,000 pounds, which should be enough to get us a fair distance. Beginning with our journey to Paris. The guard's van has space for one suitcase, which will suffice. This will be a bearable journey. The Amphitrite Express. I like that's literally a steam-powered horse. Mechanical horses raced past Piccadilly Circus and Pall Mall faster than a team of thoroughbreds. Even so, the whistle of the 825 was blowing as we pulled up to Charing Cross Station. "We have no tickets," I exclaimed in horror. "That does not signify," Monsieur Fogg remarked over his shoulder as he hurried toward the platform. "We must not miss this train." I rushed after him and we leapt aboard just as another train whistle pierced the air. A guard raised his thick brows at us as we settled into a nearby compartment. He held out a hand. "Tickets, please." I pretended to have lost them, patting down one pocket and then the other, and was about to start digging through our suitcases when Monsieur Fogg interrupted my touching performance. "My valet is trying to express we are in too much haste to purchase tickets," he said. And I tried to alter mine to fit his interpretation. Or my mime, rather. I had mixed success, but I did locate 2 5-pound notes under one of the seat cushions when I began using it for a shield. "You may purchase them from me," the guard was saying, though it is more expensive, I'm afraid. 85 pounds, please." I handed over the 85 pounds and smiled a thin smile from one working man to another. The guard gave me our tickets, I can't read tonight, and slid the compartment door shut behind him with a pneumatic hiss. "Your funds have gone down somewhat. Your character is now polished." "I'm at your service, Monsieur Fogg." "This journey will be most expensive, monsieur." "Indeed, but we can earn a little from buying and selling our possessions as we travel." "Well, yes." "Tell me, monsieur, what is the purpose of our journey? I have made a hefty wager, and I do not intend to lose." In the book, the wager was for 20,000 pounds, I believe. Which I think I read would be over 2 million pounds in today's economy. London's smog gave way to rolling hills and the pastures of the Kentish countryside, still untouched by the hand of technological advancement. Monsieur Fogg read his paper whilst I repacked our bags, thrown together in haste and confusion. As afternoon turned inexorably to evening, I discovered that my master was one of those gentlemen who broke their silence rarely, if at all. A guard rapped on our door a few miles before Dover. "You're about to submerge," he warned. "Take some people a bit funny, so watch out." "What do you mean, submerge?" I cried. "This is the London to Paris Amphitrite Express," he explained, as though to a particularly dim-witted child. "The submersible train? Talk of all the London papers?" I must have missed it, I admitted humbly. "Missed it," he said scornfully. "Every inch of her has been examined and stamped with the artificer's seal. This is the world's only bath-escape locomotive." I pressed my face to the window glass as the fins above the Amphitrite's wheels extended with a hydraulic hiss. Night fell, and we plunged past the end of the track into the freezing water of the English Channel. The relationship with Fogg has improved slightly. Pardon me? The Amphitrite plowed through the water overnight and splashed up onto wider-gauge French tracks at Calais as dawn broke. "You have a route in mind, monsieur?" I asked, as the water of the channel dried from the compartment windows. "I am as yet undecided," my master admitted. "The new canal has sped up the shipping route from Suez to Bombay, though perhaps we could take the Trans-Siberian Railway across Russia." "Surely not Siberia," I exclaimed. "So cold and grim. I have a particular fear of bears." "Then we would do well to buy furs," he replied, refraining from rolling his eyes. "There are other alternatives. We may also travel overland and across the Black and Caspian Seas." "But which is fastest?" "I believe," said he, "that is what we shall put to the test." Parbleu, I scarcely knew what to think. We arrived at Paris Gare du Nord just after 1 o'clock. Automaton porters lifted our luggage and then our persons onto the platform with long, delicately filigreed iron arms. Paris, city of my heart. I was home, but not to stay. And just to make things a little bit interesting, so it's not just me reading the whole time, I will be asking for the 4 people watching now. Hello, welcome. I will be asking for your opinion as we go on. Which route do you think we should take? And now we arrive in Paris. The game is a little bit loud on my end, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it down just a little more. Just to be safe. Monsieur Fogg says that the pocket altimeter should be particularly valuable here. Sell it for 220 pounds. I do not have room for an extra traveling cloak. We might be well off buying the wine here. I think that's gonna do it. Spend 4 hours exploring. See what we find. We had a few hours to spare. I asked Monsieur Fogg if I might enjoy my city before we had time to leave. Indeed, and should you learn anything of note, be sure to relay it. I nodded and headed into town. The talk on the streets was of one thing only, an enormous, elegant oval stadium constructed upon the green fields of Champ de Mars, and containing the technological marvels, art, amusement parks, and milling crowds of the World's Fair of 1872. Excuse me just one moment. Alright, I have returned. All apologies, dear friends. Nose was feeling a bit stuffy. Hopefully we can continue now. I clicked away when I did not intend to. I ventured inside the grand illuminated pavilions of the exposition. I went west towards the airship hangar, past a booth with a husband and wife pair selling panoramic hot air balloon rides to eager tourists. Hello, kitty. Now is not the time. Silly girl. I love you, though. I inquired as to their hourly rate, wondering if perhaps the balloon could be encouraged to go a little way east as well, and contribute to our great journey. 80 pounds for a half-hour flight, the man responded. I gaped. That is robbery. The man shrugged. We are the only balloonists here today. Are you willing to miss out on the experience of a flight over Paris? I apologize for any errant noises. My cat has decided to rub her face on the microphone. Kitty, I love you, but now is not the time. I'm going around the world, I replied. I hope for much more impressive sights in the days to come. The man nodded and moved on to the next punter with great swiftness. I regarded the airships that filled the hangar behind him. There were a huge number on display from all over the world, and my eye was immediately caught by the twin-bladed Peruvian gyrocopter, which looked tiny and flimsy in comparison with the airships surrounding it. They say the Incas invented the first gyrocopter, boasted the dark-haired pilot, pushing up her goggles to give me a wink. As their heirs, we Peruvians have made some new improvements. Or some few improvements. You do not see many Peruvian gyrocopters in the air, I remarked. Are they unsafe? The lady shook her head. No, they are quite safe, but they are hard to build. Perhaps one day soon, Monsieur Fogg and I would find ourselves flying in such a craft. I returned to the exposition center, my thoughts turning with the clouds and engine rotors. Avenues sprawled in every direction between the inviting illuminated pavilions of the exposition. An artificer was replacing an arc light, which had burned out. He first disconnected the strange machine powering the lights. It had a spinning iron wheel, which was wound around with a series of armature coils. I merely watched politely, not wanting to disturb her work. Artificers were a notoriously irritable breed. "This is bleeding folly and waste," the artificer grumbled in a thick Yorkshire accent. "These Graham machines are finicky beasts." "Graham machines?" I inquired. "Well, it's a... Oh, never mind." She waved my question away. "It's a steam engine, all right, only it doesn't make steam. Will that do? I hate explaining this stuff to laymen." I retreated hastily, not at all in terror of her irate tone, merely aware there were delights and wonders aplenty, well away from annoyed Yorkshire-bred artificers. Crowds of tourists jostled and heaved past, their eyes wide with wonder. I took a stroll down the Avenue of Nations, lined with buildings in the styles of nations of the world, and manned by foreign delegates in national dress. Although the newly formed German Empire was a conspicuous absentee in the city it had so recently conquered. The Austro-Hungarian delegation was being harangued by an artificer who looked to me like a farm boy from Provence. The artificer was pointing at one of the soldiers guarding the doorway and shouting in terrible German, "Verboten! Verboten!" "What is the matter here?" I asked the artificer, and he rounded on me. "These Austro-Hungarians," he raged in peasant-accented French. "How dare they?" "What do they dare?" The artificer pointed. "That!" The soldier by the stand moved suddenly, with a mechanical judder, and I realized he was no man at all, but rather an automaton with an enamel-painted uniform and pewter face. The artificer cursed. "These Austro-Hungarians have brought their automata soldiers to Paris. I will get my words correct by the end of the night, I promise. Even though war machines are expressly forbidden by the Guild, who knows what danger they might represent?" I turned away hurriedly. My feet were tiring and the hour was growing late. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, who was eating a meal of plain boiled beef à l'anglaise. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I know nothing about French. Although, I would assume it's English beef, just judging by l'anglaise there. "Did you enjoy the exposition?" my master inquired diffidently. Having preferred a hearty meal and an English newspaper to all the wonders that the modern world had to offer. "We are unspeakably lucky to live in such an age of invention," I declared. "It will certainly make it easier to win my wager," Monsieur Fogg replied mildly. I dreamed that night of mechanical wonders and automatons with beautifully enameled faces, knowing little of the strange inventions and stranger peoples I would soon encounter in my journey around the world. Your character is now suave. Alright. Seem to have 4 options available to us currently. We can leave for Amsterdam, Munich, Vienna, or Nice. Currently, Nice appears to be the cheapest. But Vienna appears to be the furthest. Although we would have to wait until Saturday. The quickest route would be Amsterdam, which arrives tomorrow. Pantsboom Mafada in the chat says, her signal is pretty bad, so she won't be helping on decisions, which is unfortunate. But I suppose we can afford to wait. One day to go towards Amsterdam. Why not? Or, actually, let's take another day off. I rather think this departure should be discussed. The partial Englishman's wardrobe should change their minds. Looks like we can grease the wheels. I'm sorry, doesn't that make it... Isn't that a bit more expensive than we planned? Than it showed? Goodness. Ah, all right. So that's for a more expedient ticket. I gotcha. You know what? Let's go back. Let's head to Munich. It appears we cannot go this way today. Did we not just discuss? You know what? I still think I want to go to Munich. So, I suppose to do that, we shall have to stay the night. It's been a while since I've messed around with this game, so I'm not quite sure I know what I'm doing anymore. But that's part of the fun, I suppose. We took a hotel for the night. We will be comfortable here, Monsieur Fogg remarked, but traveling overnight will often be more efficient. So you must board the longest journeys available. Perhaps, he replied, the short answer indicating, I think, that one-day journeys might often be more flexible in their timing, could allow for more connections. Still, the surrounds of the Hotel Ritz were most enjoyable. Alright, today we can embark. What happened to the map? I am confused. Alright, so that's how to zoom in. I rotated it, and I'm not sure how. There we go. Oh, that's London. We don't need to go to London. We've been to London. Alright, so today we can go to Amsterdam. But it will be a bothersome route. We can head to Munich tonight. And it will be a bearable route, which is good. Well, if we go on the Orient Express. Boarding the Orient Express was an altogether calmer affair than our race through London had been. Mechanical porters loaded us in through the windows, then snapped them shut with a delicate click. The train was very beautiful, a jewel of both European design and European diplomacy, with the Compagnie Internationale de Wagons-Lits having persuaded several envious empires to be linked together by the train line. As I said, unfortunately, I have no talent in French. Give me just 1 second to make sure everything's running right in OBS. Seems to be. Alright. Just need to double check everything, make sure everything's going smoothly. It was uniquely placed to sweep us across Europe, or at least as far as the Deutsches Kaiserreich, where the track currently ceased. A last long whistle blew, and we began our journey east. Greetings, monsieur. Can I help you at all, monsieur? I am the guard on this train. I am sure you know all about Munich. Munich is doing very well these days, I hear. Ask about... Oh, he has a name. This is Georges Mazard. Munich to Zurich. Possible to go from Munich to Zurich. I doubt it, but now, have you been to Bordeaux? No. My apologies, I have not. Shame. I wanted to ask if it was a nice spot for a honeymoon. Possible to go from Munich to Prague. Let's just say that you can obtain zoetropes in Prague, extremely valuable in Izmir. Do tell me more about Prague. Goodness, but is that the time? Ah, well. We did our best. My master wished to be undisturbed, so as we left Paris, I left him and went to explore the train. There was a delightful dining car and an observation deck formed by the replacement of an entire compartment with an open glass cube. I attended the dining car and found a few groups of people talking quietly. I sat with a young composer heading to Vienna for a concert by the great steam orchestra there, but he spoke of little but melody, harmony, and the progression of chords. I had an interest in music, but not an understanding, and so most of his words were lost on me. More interesting, however, were his remarks upon the political situation there. My uncle warned me not to play an instrument myself while within the city walls. It is apparently forbidden. But why? He shook his head, then smiled a quick smile. Perhaps they are tired of foreign musicians showing up their own great composers. He left a short while later, following a pair of chattering Parisian ladies to the observation deck to watch the stars come out. I returned to Monsieur Fogg, who, to my surprise, looked up from his paper at me. "What did you learn?" he inquired. I told him of the dining car, and he looked smartly aside, clearly unimpressed. We arrived in Munich a few hours later. Relations with Fogg have deteriorated slightly. Your character is now polished. I'm sorry you're so unimpressed, Phileas. They have to sleep here and explore in the morning. The Franco-Prussian War had concluded a year previously. Thus, my French accent was at a disadvantage during our short time in Munich. The concierge of our hotel was most suspicious when I approached the desk. I was not immune to a certain bitterness, though I knew it to be futile. France had been defeated, and the world turned once over since. Still, in order to avoid any untowardness, I spoke as little as possible during our stay, and I tried to adopt a Germanic rather than Francophone expression to match, with perhaps mixed success, if Monsieur Fogg's faintly quizzical looks were any measure. Your character is now suave. Again! The market opens at 7. Let's attend the market. Let's sell our shipping timetable and buy a train timetable. Okay, that's valuable in Berlin. We are not in Berlin. I think I'm alright, as far as the market is concerned. We've discovered a couple of new routes. What is the bank for? We must visit the bank, Monsieur Fogg declared. A robbery, monsieur? Certainly not, he replied firmly. Do you suppose I put my entire fortune into a carpet bag under your supervision? I did not answer. I regarded the bank as we entered. It was a palace of stone and shimmering marble floors with beautiful windows, fountains, and plants. You wish to withdraw funds, we were told. I warned you, it may take some time. We cannot afford even a single day, I declared. We swept out of the bank. Thankfully, our situation is not desperate, my master declared. Onwards! Now let us explore Munich. There was little daylight in Munich. The sky was shrouded in steam and oil fumes from the tractors and hydraulic excavators in the streets. I quickly returned to the safety of a cafe, not wanting to become covered head to toe in soot. My poor jacket would not survive such an indignity. Relations with Fogg have deteriorated slightly. Let us travel to Berlin. Public carriage departs for Berlin tomorrow before 4 p.m. Alright then. We shall pass the night in Munich. The remainder of the day, I went to stretch my legs and found a nervous Greek youth who was searching for a dog, which I found near a food stall. The youth thanked me, and as we talked, remarked that the fastest way to Belgrade is to go via Vienna. I paid £1 for the information, and he nodded and then moved away. Your funds have gone down a touch. Well, yes, I spent £1. Now? £500. Goodness. Maybe we'll just wait another day. As night fell, I spent a while talking to the hotelier to learn what I could, hearing from him that the fastest way to Warsaw is through Berlin, a most interesting snippet. And now... Ooh. That would be a very uncomfortable trip. Perhaps we should not go to Berlin. Much as I would like to. So, let us try Vienna. Bothersome route. What about Venice? Another bothersome route. Well, it appears we have no good options, but Berlin seems to be the best. As a -7 instead of a -9. In the Trevithick steam carriage. We crossed from Munich to Berlin in a patched-up steam carriage. The smoke pumped out of the back through a tall iron chimney, leaving a soot-smudged wake which trailed behind us like a flag. Countryside was the very definition of bucolic. Little farmsteads with cattle byres, coal sheds, and roving automatic tractors digging up the fields. Greetings, Christoph. Don't worry, you won't distract me from the road. According to my timetable, Berlin is connected to Warsaw. You mentioned trains. I've been told I knew a woman who was on a holiday in Tsaritsyn long before the freight train to Moscow went missing. Interesting. Is it possible to go from Warsaw to Minsk? Minsk. Indeed, Minsk can be reached from Warsaw aboard the Belarus Express. Now, anyway, do you like trains? Indeed I do. They're, comfortable. So do I. I do not mind driving, but a train would be better. Since I asked, tell me about Minsk. It's very cold. Is it possible to go from Minsk to Odessa? Indeed, you can get to Odessa from Minsk in the passenger carriage, but the fare is expensive. Is there a route from Odessa to Bucharest? Probably, but merchants in Astrakhan will pay a huge amount for candles scented of roads from Bucharest. So, there we are. We've learned a few things about a potential journey. A few other stops we might make. We were on the outskirts of Berlin when a shadow fell over the steam carriage. Christoph blanched and crossed himself, taking his hands from the wheel. I looked up, expecting rain, but the sight that greeted me almost defied description. An Ottoman Gaiac-class airship hung directly above the steam carriage, low enough that I could see a red-jacketed woman swinging from a trailing rope ladder and pointing towards us with a wild grin on her face. She shouted something, and 2 mechanical claws were dropped off the side of the gondola. Their pincers gleamed threateningly. "Drive, Christoph!" I shouted urgently, and Christoph opened the steam valve as far as it would go. Our lightly loaded car leapt forward, outrunning and swerving out of reach of the clawed arm. We did not slow until reaching the cover of trees, when Christoph braked hard and exhaled deeply. "What was that?" I demanded. He shuddered. "Pirates. The dread Captain Kasim, if I am not mistaken." I wondered if Monsieur Fogg regretted the loss of an airship, even one sailed by the worst sort of rogues. But it was gone from the skies. We steadied our nerves and then proceeded at a calmer pace into Berlin, grateful for the city once it swallowed us up. And thus we arrive. And we shall pass the night in a hotel. We stayed for the night in the Hotel Adlon on Unter den Linden. Unter den Linden. I wonder what Linden is. The main boulevard in the central Mitte district. From the window of the Brandenburg Gate was lit up by upturned gas lamps. I went for a late-night stroll along the avenue, past groups of people drinking at low tables. I sat down beside a pair of ladies who were each trying to outdrink the other. I kept score for them as, jug by jug, they slid slowly underneath the outdoor table and onto the cobblestones beneath. The evening was riotous, and I learned from my new friends, Adele and Claudia, that merchants in Moscow will pay fantastic amounts for absinthe from Budapest. Market will open soon, and then we can sell our wine. And there we are. Sell our wine for 2,300. Sell our European train timetable for the Caribbean timetable. A gear of a size/teeth ratio long since unfavored by engineers and hence now extremely valuable. Worth 2,800 in Khartoum. Why not? And the railway whistle could give us a bit of an advantage in future travels. So we've been going nearly an hour now. How's everybody doing? Hopefully, everybody's enjoying themselves so far. Berlin, they tell me, was once filled with the glorious sound of people speaking French. Not so anymore. Now there's nothing but the crashing of gears. Every street corner is equipped with rotaries and wheeled systems that spin glass globes this way and that. Their purpose is quite unclear. But when I investigated one by, why not, throwing my shoes at it, I discovered they were extremely robust. Not glass at all, I suspect, but some kind of crystal. The mystery persisted until nightfall, when these globes all lit up, and the people of Berlin clustered around the warmth of the globes to drink beer and converse. It seems they work hard here, but they celebrate with equal vigor. We joined the merriment. Ooh. Monsieur Fogg's health went down. We joined the merriment, earning ourselves the offer of a lift all the way to Bucharest from a stocky blonde man who spoke only in dour monosyllables. I sipped at a mug of beer with a thick head and recoiled in horror. These fiends put wheat in their beer. The afternoon turned to evening, and we finished our explorations of Berlin. Relations with Fogg have improved slightly. Hooray! And here I thought the reduced health would be a bad thing. And I have just realized I never actually put the link out on Twitter tonight. Alright though, suppose I have plenty of time. So we have Stockholm, which departs at 4 p.m. Copenhagen, which departs in 2 days. Why does the camera always swing around like that? And Warsaw, which departs tomorrow. Let us attempt journey to Stockholm. Ooh. That's not a good one. -16. Try this one. Teams are pretty demanding. How about Warsaw? Yours departure is not until tomorrow. That's fine. Or what have we to the south? Prague. There's no chance of traveling this way today. Well, yes. Okay, we can obtain zoetropes in Prague. They'll be valuable in Izmir. Question there, though, is where is Izmir? Honestly, geography has never been one of my, better traits. There's Izmir. Further to the south. Alright. Let's attempt the journey to Prague, shall we? Pass the night in a hotel. Before retiring, I afforded my master every service. providing him with clipped mustaches. And his health has gone back up, so hurrah! Alright, and south to Vienna. No, to Prague. We need our zoetropes. We want our zoetropes. Traveling on the open road. We found our German friend the next morning, polishing his car outside the hotel. The pistons are sparkling here, Mark, showing us his handiwork, and I could only agree. We got into the back, and he started the engine, feeding in the oil. The car was a variant of the Bozek design manufactured in Warsaw. German-made, our driver insisted. But I merely nodded. After all, whoever heard of a German-made car? Seems most unlikely. Monsieur Fogg did not take much note of the car, and consulted his watch every few minutes. He was, I think, counting each revolution of the wheels and computing our speed. Greetings, Monsieur Daimler. Ask me anything you like. I need to know about Prague. The clock in the town square is a piece of junk. You travel from Prague to Urga. Now you listen to me. The fastest way to Urga from here is via Ekaterinburg. But now listen. You're interested in mechanics? I find machines rather tedious. I do not think a man or woman should be allowed to be disinterested and still ride in a car. It's possible to travel from Prague to Bucharest. No idea, but now I have heard people say Bucharest is the little Paris. Whist? I'll cut, Monsieur Daimler, and you deal. Yes, let's play cards while you're driving. Brilliant idea, Passepartout. What else do you know about Urga? My friend used to talk about the Beijing Express from Urga to Beijing. Possible to go from Urga to Pangsaw Pass? Let's just say the fastest way to Pangsaw Pass from here is through open water past Red Sea Straits. That's an awful long one word there. Possible to travel from Urga to Kabul. Have you ever heard the fastest way to Kabul from here is through Tehran? Alright, we found plenty of new travel information. By midday, we reached Prague and waved our driver farewell. The market is open. That we're waiting to sell in Khartoum. We can sell our timetable. That is quite large. This might help if we go to the north. Let's buy the fur-lined boots. Just to be safe. Never hurts to be on the safe side. Now we'll pass the night in a hotel. Standing beneath the astronomical clock in Prague's bustling square, it was easy to believe we were standing in the center of a town of great artificers, all engaged in creating wondrous works and mechanical marvels. But despite the clock's ingenious prognostication of the weather, the position of the stars, the good fortune of the observer, and even the dial, which declares the eye color of the person on your left, it was impossible to ignore what stood either side of it. Soldiers, wearing the livery of the Emperor and preventing anyone from looking at the clock for too long, lest they learn some secret from its workings. Monsieur Fogg glanced at his pocket watch, then back at the great dial, and gave a gentle snort of derision. Something is wrong? I asked. You might say that, he replied with an expression, what was it, satisfaction? On his usually immobile face. The clock is 3 seconds slow. This country is in the grip of the past, I answered. But Monsieur Fogg demurred with surprising equanimity. Not so, Passepartout, he replied. It is merely oppressed. But I'm sure one day Her August Majesty Queen Victoria will hold sway here as well. He gestured away down a narrow, winding alley towards our hotel. Come, before we grow slow ourselves. Have plenty of time to explore. . Rather than leave immediately, we took some time to browse the winding streets of the old city once more. Monsieur Fogg was convinced he had seen more than one airship company flag flying from the hilltop aerodrome across the river, and we were determined to track down their headquarters. Pardon me. Crossing the Charles Bridge, we met a woman with an airship crew cap. I asked about her flights, and she beamed. "I'm no airwoman," she admitted, "but my beloved is. Ah, and there he goes, all the way to Cairo aboard one of the buzzards." Pointing up, we saw a gilded airship passing overhead. "There are other buzzards?" "A whole fleet," she replied earnestly. "It is the best line in business, the Emperor's own sponsored line. They say he travels aboard incognito." Her eyebrow twitched. "My beloved will work a few months, and then we will have enough to get married." "Congratulations," I told her. He smiled and returned to tossing pebbles into the river in a languishing swoon. Just 1 second. I've already looked at the market. I did not mean... Do not suppose we need to go to the bank. We have over 5,000 pounds. We can get 700 by tomorrow. That'll be fine. We probably won't be leaving until tomorrow. "We require 700 pounds, I said. The manager nodded. "I will have to communicate with London first, of course," he apologized. "I should have a reply tomorrow." "It seems," Monsieur Fogg remarked as we left, "we have some time to dispose of. For tomorrow, I will need to come back to the bank. Nothing new in the market. Never know. Never hurts to check." My goodness, where are we? There we are. But from here, it appears that we cannot actually go to Vienna. That's interesting. We are trying to get to... Where was it? Izmir, yeah. So we might not want to go down straight to... Well, we might. Cairo might actually be the quickest way to get to Izmir. Unless we waited for whatever this is to come back from Oh, that's not going to Vienna. That's not going to Prague. Okay. That's unfortunate. It would appear that, none of these will be coming to Prague. Oh, well. Odessa, we have a way to go towards Minsk. It would appear... Journey to Cairo might be our best bet. So, we shall pass a night in the local hotel. One second, here we are. We took a room and settled in, and I spent a few hours polishing shoes in the lobby, earning 80 pounds, as well as learning from him, that collectors in Lahore will pay a huge amount for handheld mirrors from Suez. Most intriguing. Right, we can't leave yet. We have to visit the bank when it opens. Here we are. There we are. We returned to the bank at opening time to collect our funds, and then we were ready to proceed once more. Now, we still have until tomorrow before we can leave for Cairo. Well, there's no more exploring to be done, so it would appear we have to wait one more night. At the last light of the evening, I engaged another guest in conversation to learn what I could. Came away with nothing but snippets of local gossip. Unfortunate. Cairo by blizzard. This promises to be a bothersome route. Making our way to the airport, we found the buzzards mentioned by the woman on the bridge. We boarded and found our seats, provided with safety straps, which we dutifully used, and wisely too, as when the vessel took off, it rocketed into the sky with hammer-like force that pressed us into our seats. I do believe Monsieur Fogg beamed with delight. Here was a discovery which could do wonders for his calculations. Greetings, madame. My husband would like to talk to you as well, I'm quite sure. Pardon me. I need to know about Cairo. Have you heard that one can travel aboard the Nile Express from Cairo to Luxor? Is there a route from Cairo to Jeddah? Surely that would not be possible. Is there a route from Cairo to Suez? I believe so. One can drive by private car from Cairo to Suez, but the journey is a tiring one. Well, we've learned a couple things at least. Give me just 1 second here. Here we are. The Twitch app kind of froze up on me there for a second. Right, the first day was reasonably quiet aboard. I spent my time talking to an elderly couple about various strategies in the game of canasta. Then our conversation was disrupted as we hit a terrible bout of turbulence that threw us about the train. I rushed to Monsieur Fogg, who was turning a terrible shade of green, and I administered what comfort I could. I wish I had a valet, the elderly gentleman remarked, as we all bedded down for the night above the clouds. We can be quite tiresome, I lied sympathetically. That I don't believe, he shook his head, but I'm too much of an old crock to change my habits all the same. I nodded to him, and he trotted off along the aisle. Pardon me? A shaped mustache, excellent. Attend to Monsieur Fogg, raise his health a bit more. Awakening several miles up in the air is a strange experience. Perhaps it is so even for birds who sleep on the wing. I felt quite giddy and lightheaded from an uneasy night in our chairs, and so I closed my eyes to try and rest a little longer. With such matters attended to, I passed the time eavesdropping, trying to gather information for our next journey. I discovered from a charming Egyptian ragamuffin that the infamous toy maker of Herat was once a creator of devastating weaponry. As evening settled in, the crew lit the gas lamp set into the ribs of the ship, and a long queue for the single bathroom began to form. Monsieur Fogg's health seems to be slowly deteriorating. Greetings, monsieur. Don't mind me, Passepartout, please. I've heard one can travel aboard the Nile Express from Cairo to Luxor. You mentioned trains. I've been told Omsk is connected to Irkutsk by rail. Their route from Luxor to Suez? No idea. But now the canal is changing everything. And my alarm is going off, which tells me that it is now New Year's Day, 2018, on the east coast of the United States. So, Happy New Year to everyone in New York, Virginia, Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Florida, etc., etc. Now, let us proceed with the game. It's possible to travel from Luxor to Jeddah. Here's something I do know. I hear the Al-Rashids plot to capture Jeddah from the Ottomans. Interesting, so it might not be the best idea to go that way. Pardon me? We must have flown overnight at incredible speed, as by morning the captain was already able to point out the coast of Africa approaching. I went over the rail of the ship with the other lords and ladies aboard, who gestured in excitement. "I can see a giraffe," cried a small boy to his mother, who patted the child in return, but did not disabuse him of his illusion. What he had really seen, I think, was a tethering mast, which grew larger and larger until finally one of our sailors threw an anchored line around it and grappled us into place. From there we were winched down to the ground to set foot in Egypt. Well now, this journey is proving more tiring than I expected. I can see that you are not doing well at all, monsieur. Ooh. We might be going to Jeddah soon, so this would actually not be the worst thing to shove in a suitcase. That's worth something in Khartoum. Would mean we would need to go to Khartoum. You know what? I'm gonna buy an extra suitcase. This bolt of silk. That's worth something in Baku. Not sure. We'll be going to Baku. I'm not even sure where Baku is. I might purchase the tea, though. And we shall pass a night in Cairo. And Monsieur Fogg's health improves, which is good. Cairo is attempting to modernize, following the Parisian model. The result is a mishmash of tree-lined streets and maze-like souks. Of course, the people do not care, and most certainly do not dress like Parisians. I was browsing the souk when I felt a hand dip into my pocket. I turned around fast, but the little girl whose hand was in my pocket was clearly well practiced and slid between my knees to run away. I was 30 pounds poorer. That's alright, we've got nearly 5,500. It took a few hours to explore, investigating the various options for how we might continue our journey. We can embark to Suez, or a rather bothersome trip. Zoom out a bit. Go to Hail, but that'll arrive on Wednesday, which will mean waiting 2 days. Shipping route from Suez to Bombay. Where's Bombay? Need to get to Izmir. Bombay is in India, is it not? Maybe this is my fault. I hear shipping route and I assume that means boat. So this generally looks like Bombay. Or like India, rather. Like a general sort of India area. There we go. Bombay. That is quite a way south. Not Izmir at all. We could find a way to Tehran. We could take whatever the ship is. Or we could access whatever this route is. For now, I think we shall head towards Suez. And this bothersome Bozak car. We found a private driver to take us to Suez. The journey was quick enough. The roads here in Egypt are surprisingly well maintained, and the car itself ran efficiently. I feel like there should have been a comma there. I did not want to tempt fate, so I stayed quiet, and we arrived without fuss an hour or so later. Cairo to Suez does appear to be a rather short trip. Fur-lined boots should be quite valuable here. Going to be no departures today. We should explore a little. You know what? Yes, 230 pounds. That's not bad at all. By this Caribbean timetable, which I think I've already had, but which certainly would not be the worst investment. Preparing ourselves for a warm climate. Ah, so we've discovered new routes. Good! I wonder what that is. That day 90 disaster it showed there. That can't be good. Also, we're hoping not to have a day 90, aren't we? Pass one more night here. The uninformed lamplighters lit the gas lamps as the sun set over Suez, bathing the wide avenues of the city in a smoky yellow glow. I enjoyed this city without thinking too hard about its curious existence, blooming like a little flower with the desert all around. I took a cup of tea in an extravagant little tea shop in Suez. It was packed to the brim with rich traders and adventurers drawn to the small port by the recent opening of the Suez Canal. I was attempting to get some service despite the unruly customers when a dark-skinned personage in an impeccably tailored but oil-stained jacket entered. I caught the well-dressed man's eye, and he came over to my table and greeted me softly in accented French. "Olivier Laponte, dirigible pilot, at your service, monsieur." "Passepartout, valet and traveler," I replied. "Traveler, then." He shook my hand. "My ship, the Gamela, departs soon on our maiden voyage." "Where is she headed?" I asked curiously. Monsieur Lapointe sipped his tea. "Not far. Our destination is the provincial capital of Khartoum in Sudan." He gave me his card and a vivid description of the Gamela. I had no doubt that I could spot Monsieur Laponte's airship at the docks if we should desire to travel next to Khartoum. As I stumble over my words, I would like to go to Khartoum. I have something that would sell well in Khartoum. Yeah, the gear here. But I would like to go to Izma. Except I didn't get what I needed to sell in Izma, did I? Never mind. Sitting here worrying about this. Alright, and Monsieur Fogg will not lose any health on this trip. The Gamela is a new Ifrit-class airship, designed to evoke the glorious pharaonic past. Possibly as a twit to Egypt's Ottoman Caesarians. That's a word I'm not familiar with. The envelope was painted with all-over stylized poppies, and intricately feathered birds were picked out all along her prow. Attend to Monsieur Fogg. Your attentions are most beneficial. I should hope so. I do my best as your valet, monsieur. Despite Captain Lapointe's youth, we ascended from Suez in both orderly and timely fashion, and made good progress towards Khartoum. "What is Paris like?" Captain Lapointe asked yearningly over breakfast. "My father talks of it often, but I've never been outside Africa." "To understand Paris, you must see her," I told him wistfully. "You must breathe her in and walk in her streets and climb her towers and lie in her gutters. That is the only way to know my city." Later, when we had tethered in Khartoum, we were making our farewells. Captain Lapointe seized my hand. "Thank you for telling me of Paris, monsieur," he said fervently. "Perhaps one day I will go there." "There is much beauty here," I gestured around us. "You need not dream of Paris with the wonder of Africa spread before you." The captain gave me a quick nod, and then we were swiftly swallowed up by the busy, stifling streets of Khartoum. To the market to sell our 63-tooth gear. Okay, that's going to be useful in India. Bandar and Abbas. Or is it Bandar Abbas? Yeah, I think that's all. That's just one place. Not sure where that is, though. If we go to Dubai, I can sell this bolt of silk and the engine oil. And make pretty decent money. I spent a few hours in exploration, learning the ways in which we might travel onwards. Pass a night in the hotel. Hopefully Mr. Fogg's health improves a bit. Yes. Khartoum had been conquered by the Ottoman Empire and their Egyptian subjects over a half-century ago, but it chafed visibly under the Imperial yoke. Pardon me. I found one such malcontent and asked her about the city, but she hurried quickly away, perhaps believing me to be an agent of the authorities. I played the role well enough with the next person I found, and learnt a minor detail. A fast airship ran across the Red Sea to Aden on the edge of the Arabian Sea, from where steamers plied their route to Bombay. That will take us to Gigi. We would be better off going to Aden, I suppose. Ah, on the same airship. Wonderful. Welcome back aboard the Gamela, said the cheerful Captain Lapointe, recognizing me as I took a turn on the observation deck. It's pleasant to see a face that isn't Ottoman on this journey. Why did so many Turks board at Khartoum? I chose to ignore his expression of prejudice. Bound for Aden. There are some deep negotiations afoot between Queen Victoria and the Sublime Porte, I wager. He shrugged. Too deep for a common man such as myself. Pardon me. I don't know what's going on with my voice tonight. I feel like I'm a bit hoarse. You know so little of your destination? The captain chaffed me. Aden is administered by British India, equidistant from Suez and Bombay, and Stone Town. Attend to Monsieur Fogg once more. I just want his health to stay around 90. We disembarked at Aden a few hours later. My head was heavy with Captain Lapointe's words, but the sight of a gleaming port city set into the crater of a volcano chased everything but wonder from my mind. Don't know if I have anything that will sell here. Although, we'll probably be doing some seafaring soon, so that might not hurt to have. Bombay is generally where I'd like to go. Arrives tomorrow or departs tomorrow at 2 p.m. Where are we? There we go. Pass the night in the hotel. I lay down to sleep and heard a rumbling through the pillow. It was no doubt in my stomach. I've always considered myself an excellent eater, but the world, it seems, is full of different ideas of eating. Have some time to explore before we depart from Bombay. British-administered port of Aden was dramatically situated in the crater of a dormant volcano. Whitewashed buildings and delicate minarets gleamed against sheer black cliffs, and sleek bloodied ships floated in the bright water of the natural harbor. There was regular service from Aden to the British Indian city of Bombay. A fair passel of artificers have been boarding the steamer, said one of the sailors. It'll be an interesting trip. You know how artificers love to gossip. I made an especial effort to savor the warm sun and clean air of the coast. It would not be long before we were back aboard some contraption or other, reeking of smoke and steam. And now we shall depart for Bombay, although that will be an awful trip. Ah, but because of our Panama hat, we'll only lose 7 instead of 28. That's wonderful. Glad I bought that now. Very glad I bought that. At Aden, we stopped aboard the steamer Mongolia, which we had learned of in Suez but not taken. The passengers were a mixture of well-to-do sorts and military types. I wondered which of them we would come to know on the 8-day trip to India. The Mongolia had filled her iron belly with coal at Aden, and we departed Steamer Point in good time. The Times, Austro-Hungary accused of World's Fair saber rattling. 8 days. I think I'd lose my mind if I was on a boat for 8 days. The shipping lanes outside Aden were busy. We passed close enough to other steamers to make out individual passengers taking a turn above the deck. A little boy leaned over a railing and waved at me. So I waved back and grinned. Monsieur Fogg gave me a look as if to chide me for making a spectacle of myself, but I was too taken with the child's expression of artless joy to take my master's disapproval much to heart. I turned my face to the warm wind and enjoyed the sense of movement. Now we were truly on our way. If you will pardon me just one more moment. I apologize once more. I was feeling a bit stuffy. What is your wish, master? Passepartout, there you are. Game of whist, monsieur? That would be most entertaining. How will we cross the Pacific, monsieur? There are many options, but which one we will choose will decide our route across the Americas. How are our funds? We are very well funded indeed. You've made some excellent decisions. Very good. At breakfast, I saw a young, bronze-skinned lady in a lilac day dress scribbling in a notebook, her eggs and smoked mackerel untouched upon her plate. Every now and then she would pause and gaze into the middle distance, pen pressed against her lips. I decided to introduce myself, with every gentlemanly courtesy, our eyebrows raised in challenge. I have no interest or talent with polite conversation, if that is your intent. I did not intend to impose, I said, flashing a conciliatory smile. She rolled her eyes and tugged angrily upon her lace cuffs. Of course you did. Why must people tell outright lies in the name of politesse? I was only further entangled a moment later when the lady's father arrived, Monsieur Williamson. Eleanor, he said reprovingly, who is this man? My name is Noor, she said firmly, and this man is no one of consequence. I'm sure you'll find him most congenial, father. That she swept away, leaving me to explain myself to her beleaguered parent. Unfortunate. Just attend... Oh, or not. I happened upon Demoiselle Williamson in the piano room, where she was studiously ignoring the music and merriment in favor of her notebook. Demoiselle Williamson, we meet again. I don't know what happened there. My mouth just kind of lost itself. The lady held up a finger and bid me wait a moment and finished her sentence with a flourish before looking up. Oh, it is you. What are you exactly? An adventurer. Are you? She smirked. And what would you say if I confessed that I, too, am an adventurer? How did you come to be so? She gave me a wry look and lifted her notebook. I learned to write stories, Passepartout. You may be trapped here on this hulking steamer, but I'm wandering the catacombs of Egypt and unearthing its marvels. May I read your stories? Gave me a wicked look and a smile. How do you know you've not read some of my stories already? I have a wide readership under my assumed name. It seemed I have made a friend in the demoiselle. Let us attend to Monsieur Fogg while we have some time. Monsieur Williamson offered me a pipeful of tobacco in the evening. I am perplexed by my daughter, he admitted miserably. What is so perplexing? I asked gently. She does not behave in the manner of a lady at all, he groaned. Told me last night that she's been writing penny dreadfuls for this past year. She is... His gentlemanly voice dropped with horror, though the last word was a mere croak. Published. She had as much told me so yesterday, but I pretended surprised. You must be very proud. Cheaply printed tales of horror and adventure were a London fashion which quickly spread. Indeed, the most popular stories were set in Egypt and Africa, and I had little doubt that Demoiselle Williamson had added her own inventions to their number. What? Monsieur Williamson glared at me. It is a scandal. She has broken her engagement because she has independent means. Perhaps then she'll find her own husband, I suggested. Monsieur Williamson's neck turned an unsavourably shade of purple. But anyone with a penny may now read her most intimate thoughts wantonly printed upon the page. I'm sure they're not her true thoughts, monsieur. Who is to know, he shrugged. And whatever are her true thoughts, she is as thorough a mystery to me as a foreigner. His imagination failed, and he spat. I sighed and considered my next words. At least she is healthy and happy. She is young and foolish, Monsieur Williamson corrected bitterly. He took his leave soon after, and as I retired to my bed, I saw him still pacing the deck, eyes downcast. Greetings, demoiselle. Well, hello to you. What can you tell me of Bombay? The British still control Bombay, though I hear there is unrest elsewhere. Is it possible to go from Bombay to Nova Goa? I believe so. One can travel by Savarkar to Atmotic from Bombay. Savarkar Atmotic. Oh my goodness, that's a new one. From Bombay to Nova Goa. Possible to go from Nova Goa to Bangalore. Yes, Bangalore can be reached from Nova Goa aboard the passenger ship, but the journey is a tiring one. I'm hoping that we can find a passage from Bombay to Dubai. So I can sell some things. A slim volume had been slid under my door in the night, bound with a ribbon and a short note. To a fellow adventurer, here is my latest volume, Noor. I picked up the cheaply bound book, titled Adriana and the Lost Sarcophagus of Thebes, and opened it at the first page. Adriana Harawi was no ordinary lady. While other girls of her age and background took up watercolors and practiced their scales upon the piano and dreamed of matrimony, Adriana dreamed of sun-bleached cities and featureless deserts of yellow sand. I settled in to read Miss Williamson's novella until my master woke. My water woke. Good job, me. Till my master woke and required my services. I am at your service, Monsieur Fogg. How goes our progress, monsieur? Day 22, I believe. We're almost halfway. We have enough in the wallet. We are most wonderfully funded indeed. Well, demanded Demoiselle Williamson at lunch, what did you think of my story? Adriana is a charming creation. I only wish my father thought so, she sighed. He read my volume last night and believes Adriana is merely a cipher for my own passions and being. There are some similarities. The demoiselle tossed her head. Worse, he believes Lord Havering to be Adriana's lover, and now suspects that I am concealing my own paramour for him. She glared into the middle distance. Lord Havering is the villain. He is Adriana's arch nemesis. He is utterly misreading the text. Such are the dangers of authorship, I grinned. No doubt many others will misconstrue your words in their turn. Aha! Victorian-era fan fiction was born. But Havering thwarts Adriana constantly and condescends to her at every turn. Even threatens her with a rapier. How can such relationship be misread? Demoiselle Williamson dug into her venison savagely, muttering of interfering fathers and irresponsible readers. Wisely, I smiled in a most amicable, friendly fashion. There was clearly nothing that could be done for this unfortunate father-daughter pair. And with Bombay so close, now is not the time to attempt any risky reconcilements. Greetings, demoiselle. Well, hello to you. I need to know about Bombay. Bombay is the gateway to British India. Possible to go from Bombay to Dvarka. No idea, but now Dvarka is a sacred Hindu pilgrimage site. Can you travel from Bombay to Madras? Absolutely. Bombay is linked to Madras aboard the Madras Mail. I am no tourist, Sir Francis declared with cheerful glee toward my master as they dealt another hand. I'm taking the train to Calcutta on important business. How long does this train take? I inquired, or was about to, as just then the infernal Monsieur Williamson steamed in, threw a glove at me, and bellowed a challenge. Excuse me, monsieur? I asked in bewilderment. You mean to challenge me? You, said Monsieur Williamson, voice dropping with venom, are Lord Havering, and you have led my daughter astray. I am not Lord Havering, I insisted, though I perceived, unlike the rest of the recreation room, Monsieur Williamson was referring to the character in Adriana and Lost Sarcophagus of Thebes. The man scowled. Besides which, Lord Havering is clearly a villain and not a romantic hero. Aha! He picked up his glove and then tossed it once more. You have read her text, you blackguard. Yet the way we spoke together, you acted quite the charming innocent. He drew his arm back and made a fist, and I realized he was almost certainly about to punch me in the face. I threw myself to the floor, not wishing to engage in fisticuffs like a dockside brawler. Equally, I had a powerful urge to protect my delicate, cherished face from his brutish fists. He tripped over me, and we tangled together on the carpeted floor. What in the name of Ra and Osiris is going on? Miss Williamson shouted, arriving at that precise, unfortunate moment. He seized her father by the armpits and dragged him away, muttering various unladylike curses, as I called vague apologies. Monsieur Fogg regarded me with remarkable aplomb, given the scene which had preceded. You would tell me, would you not, if you had outraged any ladies of late, Passepartout? He remarked. I can only glare dumbly in response. I quite liked that one. Give me just one moment here. There we go. Tonight is an interesting experiment for me, and I'm glad to have you along for the ride, all three of you who seem to be watching. I hope you're enjoying yourselves as well. I kept to my cabin on the last day of our journey to avoid any repetition of the previous evening's debacle, but I could not avoid Miss Williamson as we disembarked at Bombay. She clutched her hands to her bosom theatrically as she spotted me. Goodbye, my dear Lord Havering, she called, counterfeiting a sickly, love-struck smile. I will never forget you. Nor I you, my Adriana, I called back with a rakish smile as her father turned a bright, horrible shade of red beside her. And then we disembarked into the humid, salt and smoke-laced air of Bombay. We had arrived in India. Why do I keep trying to say Imbia? Ah. I acquired a third suitcase. I can sell this bolt of silk. Maybe not worth as much here as it would have been. But there are worse options, I suppose. I shall purchase the tobacco. And I have a third suitcase that is completely empty, for I currently have no use for it. Hopefully, as I said earlier, we can find a way from Bombay to Dubai. Although there are a couple of other cities where I could sell the oil can. My goodness, what a journey that would be. It feels like it would take months. We pass an evening in Bombay. Monsieur Fogg cared not a straw for the wonders of Bombay, but gave me a few hours' leisure as he settled into his evening paper. I ended up wheezing and puffing my way up Malabar Hill to the highest point in South Bombay. I paused at the top and looked out at the bay. British airships dominated the skyline, tethered loosely to the gunboats that patrolled the docks. Brightly painted merchant ships darted into the harbor, eager to unload their cargo before the light faded. Catching my breath, I found my steps irresistibly drawn towards the Banganga Temple. The temple tower was reflected serenely in the water of the reservoir, fed by an underground spring said to come from the Ganges. I entered the temple, fascinated by the relief carvings of gods and goddesses, which covered the entire Gopuram. I'm probably saying that wrong anyway. I apologize. One of the priests spotted me and issued a great pained cry of alarm. I turned and fled without a full thought passing between my brain and feet. Alas, the priest's cry drew the attention of his fellows and other temple-goers, all of whom descended upon me in a pack. They took my shoes and hat and ejected me from the temple complex with rather zealous roughness. "But my shoes! My hat!" I remonstrated to the priest's angry backs. A woman in a deep umber sari offered me a pristine white handkerchief. Non-Hindus are not allowed in the temple, she declared, especially with their shoes on. I did not realize, I explained, and she sniffed. "What do you think you are, Gora?" she demanded, hand on her hip. "This is not Paris, this is Bombay. Bother yourself to learn the difference." I handed her back her handkerchief with thanks, duly chastened. I resolved to be more mindful of local customs, for I chanced losing more than my shoes with my ignorance. I returned to my master somewhat barefoot and rather shamefaced. "I hope this will not happen again," said my master coldly. That was to be the last word on Bombay, gateway to the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. Except for, "And what, pray, has happened to your shoes?" I have no shoes, but let's explore, why not? I walked the streets a while, discovering the possibilities for how we might make progress. Let me take a look at what I've got here. I lost my extra suitcase. Bangalore, Colombo, and Madras. Okay. Yeah, I can make my way to one of those. Shouldn't be too hard from here. There is a train to Bangalore right now. Ah, we can only take 2 suitcases. We have 2 suitcases. We should be fine. Ah, only have space for 1 suitcase. Never mind. Okay, we can pay £10 for extra space. Why not? £10 is nothing. We have over 7,000. We're fine. The Bombay Express was a fine train, rivaling the Orient Express herself for comfort and luxury. Inside each softly lit compartment, Persian rugs and Venetian lamps threw color over fittings of teak wood and burnished brass. Most acceptable, if only all our journeys were so well appointed. Pardon me? Greetings, Monsieur Compton. Can I help you? Have you locked yourself out of your compartment? I'm very interested in Bangalore. It's where the British escape when it grows too hot in the north. It's possible to go from Bangalore to Madras. Absolutely, there's a regular service by road from Bangalore to Madras, but the fare is very high. Possible to go from Madras to Colombo. Never mind that, you can obtain zoetropes in Colombo, extremely valuable in Singapore. Perhaps a cup of Earl Grey, Monsieur Compton? Most generous. What more can you tell me about Madras? I hear that some buyers will pay well for engine oil from Madras. Possible to go from Madras to Singapore? Now you listen to me. Merchants in Hong Kong will pay extremely well for candle-sensitive roads from Singapore. Madras to Stone Town. Do you realize that the last bank in Stone Town is closed? Ask about Stone Town. As beyond my remit, monsieur. Stone Town to Nasinga, you listen to me, you can buy bolts of airship cloth in Nasinga that will sell for a fortune in St. Denis. Stone Town to Ujiji, I don't know, but listen, Ujiji is on the banks of Lake Tanganyika. As we travel on the Madras Mail, I went to explore the observation decks set with wicker chairs and parasols to better and more comfortably observe the countryside flashing past. Now is where I met Anne-Marie Spencer, a girl of maybe 10 years, sketching the distant hills. I greeted her politely as I took the spot beside her. She smiled and with deft movements adjusted the position of her wheeled chair to give me more room, dropping one of her pencils as she moved. I returned it with a bow and she giggled. "You must be French," she declared. "You are gallant indeed." I smiled politely and looked aside. "I knew it," she said. "I have a good eye. I see things as they are. That is why I draw." I looked over her pictures to be confronted by their strangeness. I could not recognize anything of the landscape she was so closely watching in the lines and shapes that filled the page. You have a most unusual style, I hedged. Oh, monsieur, she said. I have a good eye. I can see you're lying. I shrugged and did not attempt to deny it. The pictures are terrible, mademoiselle, I told her. They offend my eye, my sense of proportion and space. They are unspeakable. Nice. You're insulting a 10-year-old. She nodded. Most honorable, she replied. I knew it. Just then my attention was distracted as my master beckoned me over to make ready his evening wear. I bid her farewell, and she nodded to me. I will see you again, Monsieur Passepartout, she told me as I left her. I did not stop to wonder that day how it was she knew my name. The next morning, I discovered I had lost my passport, and with us barely an hour from arriving into Bangalore. I told Monsieur Fogg immediately, risking his displeasure at the possibility of delay, but he merely shrugged. Then you must find it again. I decided to enlist the help of Anne-Marie and her excellent eye, so I tracked her down on the observation deck and explained the situation. She looked most concerned. What might happen to you without documents? At worst, I will not be allowed to travel, I replied. That would be most serious, as my master is on a journey around the world. She nodded. Well then, we shall have to look, won't we? I think you should search the crew cabins where my chair cannot access, and I will look about here. It seemed a good plan, so I agreed. As I was heading from the car, I felt certain the girl would locate my papers with her sharp eye and inquisitive mind. But went to search the crew cabins immediately all the same. My breaking and entering was rumbled in moments, of course, by a cabin boy of only 7 or 8 years. I tried to explain, but his English and my Punjabi rather missed each other. The lad quickly called for the guard. The guard, a surly fellow with a mysterious mustache he was in the habit of waving around, sat me down and demanded the facts, which I provided. I had it yesterday. Naturally, you boarded the train. He waved to me to continue. I visited the observation deck. Very wise. The views are most astounding. Go on. He chewed his mustache and thought. I was talking to a girl in a wheelchair. At that, he sat bolt upright. Anne-Marie Spencer. Then our mystery is solved. Come with me. Together we marched to the observation deck, where we found the young mademoiselle idling away at her sketching. Young lady, the guard demanded, stand up. I watched horrified as young crippled Anne-Marie got up from her wheelchair, and then curtsied in front of me. I'm afraid I am a dreadful kleptomaniac, she apologized with deep insincerity, and an unparalleled liar to boot. My passport, please, I demanded, with no small irritation. I dropped it, she replied with an indifferent shrug. Somewhere. Tell me where, I insisted firmly. Then Anne-Marie sat down again, suddenly glum. You stop being charming, she said morosely. Here's your passport. Reached into a fold of her dress and pulled out my papers, and the guard wheeled her away as I wiped my brow with relief. A long and most difficult delay had been avoided, and just in time as we arrived into Bangalore a moment later. If you will pardon me for just a second, I need to go get some water. I will be right back. Alright, I have returned. And I've just realized that the stream does have a slight delay. Which mainly means that when my alarm goes off to tell me that the new year has begun in a new place, the stream is going to be a little bit behind. But that's fine. Not a problem. Let us take the time to explore. We spent most of our time in Bangalore cantonment rather than the city proper, as it was administered directly by the Raj. The cantonment held the largest British garrison in South India. and had therefore developed the churches, shops, bars, clubs, bungalows, schools, gardens, and theaters required to sustain such a concentration of officers, mem sahibs, and children. Yet another word I'm not familiar with. I had a few hours to spare, so I took a walk in Meads Park, where a group of off-duty cavalry officers were playing a game of cricket under the shade of the peepul trees. "Fancy playing with us?" a young chap with a sparse, optimistic mustache called out. "Bien sûr," I called back, and he tossed me the ball, which I caught one-handed, much to the amusement of the other cavalrymen. The ball's leather was scuffed and pitted with use. The batsman stood in front of the stumps at the other end, his face shiny with sweat. My young friend took his place as wicket-keeper. Lobbed the ball. I bowled it overarm, a new type of delivery that remained controversial, but was effective nonetheless. The move seemed to discomfit the already fatigued batsman, and he swung wide of the mark. That's another one. Is that a real word? I am not sure. Discomfit. Interesting. My young friend caught the ball neatly. "Nicely done," he called. "Where did you learn that?" I smiled. "I used to be an acrobat," I replied. "I learnt all sorts of maneuvers there." Interesting fact there. There actually was a bit in the novel where Passepartout ended up separated from Monsieur Fogg and spent some time as a circus performer. I was wondering if the game would make any nod to that. The man laughed, and jolly useful they are, too. As I took my leave, the batsman tossed the ball back to me. "Keep it," he declared. "A souvenir." I thanked him and pocketed the thing, not wanting to mention my habit of selling our souvenirs. When I told Monsieur Fogg of my encounter and showed him my prize, his face eased into a most uncharacteristic smile. "I played cricket as a child," he said, "the gentleman's game." I should admit that I had always imagined my master to have sprung fully formed and complete with cravat and spats from his mother's womb. The notion of him as a child, and more so as a child who played games, well, perhaps my master had a heart after all. You see, a minute ago, yeah, there, it says it's pretty valuable here. We can sell this timetable, buy this one. That's worth something in Calcutta, interesting. We will be going to America at some point. Cricket ball is worth something in Singapore. Calcutta. I wonder what the Englishman's wardrobe is actually good for. We may be going to Colombo, so it might not be a bad idea to buy the rifle. We are closing in on day 30, though. Ah, Colombo is actually fairly close. Interesting. I don't want to go to Nova Goa just yet. I would like to go to Madras. For that, we have to wait until Tuesday. Goodness gravy, that's a bit expensive. We shall not go for Nova Goa. We shall return to Bangalore. We shall pass the night in a hotel. As night fell, I spent a few hours polishing shoes in the lobby, earning £82 in fees and tips, as well as discovering from him that some buyers will pay well for hunting rifles from Colombo. I thought I was going to sell my hunting rifle in Colombo. After we go to Madras tomorrow. Let's pass another evening here in Bangalore. Before going to bed, I spent a few hours walking around and found nothing of any particular interest. I must say, I'm rather pleased by how this game is written. I did read the book when I was in school, so I'm rather happy at how similar this is. Pardon me. We hired a phaeton from Bangalore for the long and uncomfortable drive across the middle of India to Madras, following the line of the Palar River. Greetings, Monsieur Pardeep. Can I tend to your needs, sir? According to my timetable, Madras is connected to Colombo. You mentioned airships. I've been told Calgary is linked to Toronto aboard the Belrose. Interesting. Can you travel from Colombo to Singapore? I believe so. Colombo is linked to Singapore by T-Clipper. Possible to go from Singapore to Brisbane. Now you listen to me. You can pick up harmonicas in Brisbane, extremely valuable in New Orleans. Not a bad idea. Certainly something we should keep an eye out for, I would think. Also, I see we've gone back up to 4 viewers currently, so welcome. I hope you've been having a lovely evening so far. The speed of our phaeton was cruelly slow over the rough roads. After a while, I began to wonder if a boat might be quicker. Several were passing us by, and thanks to the current, all were overtaking us. I put the matter to Monsieur Fogg, who shook his head with a tiny motion. It would not do, he murmured. That was that. I settled back and we bumped our way along the road. As the afternoon wore on, the ocean became visible, a glittering blue cloth. The market is not open for 12 hours, so we must pass the night. Madras was a city within a city. Inside the walls and fortifications of Fort St. George was Whitetown, where British memsahibs and factors traded and went to church and traveled from place to place in mechanical palanquins. Outside the walls was the glorified shanty of Blacktown, where Indian servants and laborers and clerks made their homes. That seems a little bit racist, but then again, this is the 1800s. I ventured into Blacktown, where I attracted a few glances, but no real attention. No doubt there were many reasons for a lone foreigner to wander the cramped streets and back alleys. After a few minutes, I realized I was being stalked. I turned to face my shadow to find myself face to face with a nun. Would you like a blessing, good sir? An ornate gold cross hung heavily from her neck. Yes, sister. Her smile sprouted razors, and with no further warning, she brought her heavy gold cross down on my head with a crack. Curses! My vision sputtered and sparked into blackness. When I awoke, I was in a nunnery. My nun assailant offered me a cool cloth. I'm Sister Panamalar, and this is the convent of the Sisters of Didacus. Nuns are not supposed to go around kidnapping people, I declared indignantly. The ways of God are mysterious to men, the nun replied, notably not apologizing. Besides, we need your help, she added. My order does not believe, as the Pope does, that automatons are abominations. We believe the machines, too, are capable of grace. All this theology while my head still span. I went briefly cross-eyed and fell over. The sister propped me back up. Please, listen to me, she said. The Didacian sisters are dedicated to the search for a machine which has a soul, and now we require your help in the search. You could simply have asked. The Lord does not ask, he expects. Now listen to me. She helped me woozily to my feet. If you find an automaton whose shard is engraved with a soul on your travels, send a telegram to us. We have our own receiving station here. We will reward you materially, if that is your wish, but we must have such a shard. Sister, this is very far-fetched, I insisted. Automatons with souls? Who ever heard of such a thing? I have faith, the nun said calmly. I apologize. My nose is stopping up on me again. Then she let me go. I did not know what to make of Sister Panamalar and her order of artificer nuns then, and I do not know now. I admit I was glad to know we would be leaving Madras and its walls and fortifications and secrets. We shall explore, and I'll take one more moment. Clear my nose. Right, I have returned. I apologize once again. All week, I have had. Sorry, didn't mean to hit the microphone. All week, my nose has been fine, and I've barely been coughing. Today, snot everywhere. I am so sorry. Hopefully, we will have fewer disruptions as the stream continues. I struck up a few conversations here and there, hunting for options for how we might proceed. Hopefully, we will find a way to Colombo. Departs tomorrow. Teams are pretty demanding. We could always pass another day at the hotel. We made ourselves comfortable for the night, and I afforded the master... No, I spent a while talking to the hotelier to find out what I could. Learning that you could buy bolts of pure silk in Rangoon that you can sell for profit in Hong Kong. Useful information, no doubt. Now today, we can travel to Colombo. We boarded a fast airship run by a British company that promised to reach Colombo within 2 hours. The airship was not as fast as advertised, of course, but not to any considerable degree. And they more than made up for it with some excellent tea and scones. Not the bank. I did not intend to go to the bank. I regarded the manager of the bank as we entered. A well-dressed, calm gentleman who greeted us with cool enthusiasm. We at least need until Monday before we can leave. Or until tomorrow before we can leave. So it certainly won't hurt us. I can sell the rifle for a fair amount. Anything else going to be worth much here? Sell this. Won't be needing it for a while. This might be good for us if we go to Calcutta. I'm hoping we'll get to Singapore. I already have Darjeeling tea. Pardon me. The harbor at Colombo, capital city of British Ceylon, was so busy with trading ships that the water was barely visible, and the sky was crisscrossed with glinting metal chains tethering airships to the dock. A young Senegalese man in an ill-fitting jacket looked over the scene, with an expression of unbridled longing. I felt a rush of fellow feeling. I'd seen so many wonders which far eclipsed this scene, but the purity of his joy touched me. I looked up at the bright painted airship suspended in the stippled Ceylonese sky and saw them through his eyes, a miracle. He turned towards me, perhaps sensing my gaze. "Excuse me, sir," he asked in the tones of the educated middle class. "Are you an aeronaut?" "I am a valet, monsieur," I said in aggrieved tones. "Do you not tell from my garments?" He reddened in embarrassment and mumbled some apology. I want to join an airship crew, sir. I want to fly." "I quite understand," I told him. "There'll be many dangers and risks in the life you seek. You're young and callow, and the world is unkind." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Thank you for your advice, sir. I will think on it." I left him there and walked back to the harbor, through the thriving city that sprawled out in the shadow of the fort. It was kind of him to say he would consider my words, but knowing the arrogance of youth, I doubt it was the truth. Spent the night in a charming suite in the Grand Oriental Hotel opposite the Victoria Arcade. The clattering of the electric trams ran late into the night, and I had to bury my head under the duck-down pillow to sleep. I'm beginning to detest the rest of the world, and I long for the quiet of Savile Row. I don't know what happened there. Ah yes, we must wait for the bank to open. at 11. Skipped ahead a bit further than I intended to. But there we are, we have collected our funds from the bank. And now... Singapore is going to be in China. That is Russia. Where is Singapore? Goodness. Ah, there it is. Is that China? Does that count? 400 pounds leaves tomorrow at noon. Well, we have plenty of time. With what remained of the day, I starched the colors of our shirts. I ran a few errands for the hotelier. That's probably better. We want information. Earning 65 pounds, as well as discovering from him that the quickest way to Calcutta is through Madras. I made a note to tell my master. And now we shall depart to Singapore. We boarded a sleek T-Clipper with a bright red envelope and roaring twin engines. Will we be comfortable aboard? I asked the captain, a lean, dark-eyed Chinese man in the last flush of youth. I go to join my wife in Singapore, the captain confessed. I'm in a celebratory mood, and you will have everything you need. So saying, he flung the ship up into the air. Another victim of the Madras head smasher found dead. Goodness. Was that the nun? The nun that attacked us? I found myself standing beside the cheerful young captain. Are you newly married? I asked perspicaciously. That's a fun word. He gave a little groan. Oh, is it so easy to tell? My crew must be laughing up their sleeves at me, but honestly, I don't care. So it is a love match. Oh no, he looked faintly ill. No, our marriage was arranged by our families in the proper way. Finding myself in love with her is an unexpected pleasure, though I suppose it is not strictly dutiful. I thought much on Captain Go's attitude and situation, but came to few conclusions that night aboard the airship. Greetings, Captain. Hello there, my good Passepartout. I'm very interested in Singapore. Oh, really, monsieur? Can you travel from Singapore to Batavia? Or Batavia? There's no R there. I don't know, but you can pick up candles scented of rose in Batavia, extremely valuable in Hong Kong. How about Port Moresby? Oh no, I've forgotten, I'm so sorry. Ah well. There were rumblings of discontent aboard the ship, centered upon... And there's my alarm again. Apologies for the interruption, but it is now January 1st, 2018, here in my part of the world. So... Happy New Year to everybody in U.S. Central Time Zone. In Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Georgia, etc., etc. There were rumblings of discontent aboard the ship, centered upon the figure of First Mate Ranuga, a dark-skinned, towering Sinhalese woman. I inquired subtly into her grudge over lunch. This is our last voyage, she replied darkly. The captain's selling the ship and joining his wife's business. He seems to be happily married. He cut me a disbelieving glance. There are plenty of married captains who don't give up the sky. We stared at our unappetizing stew as the crew grumbled. Why don't you buy the ship? I suggested. First Mate Ranuga's expression turned even blacker. Oh, I tried, but the price is too high, even if we go all in together. How much? I demanded gallantly. 27,000 pounds, she replied crisply. That's how profitable selling tea is, it seems. She glared at me. You want to help? I politely declined. You see our situation? Well, just wait and see. That's essentially what we currently have, plus what we hope to win from the bet. Assuming we make it around the rest of the world and back to London within another 45 days. The first sign of trouble was when the lights began to flicker. The gas lamp sputtered out just before the secondary engine cut out, leaving the airship in darkness and silence. I groped my way to the bridge to investigate the matter. Raised voices echoed from behind the oak-paneled door, speaking in English. I stopped to listen and gasped at what I heard. "Nehinsa," I heard Captain Go's voice say pleadingly. "How can you do this?" I couldn't hear the reply, and so pressed my ear against the door. I could hear the sounds of many feet shuffling. I guessed more than half the crew were on the bridge. I recognized First Mate Renuga's strident tones, now cracked and breathy. "You did this, Captain. You abandoned us first." I kept listening as Go protested, but Renuga cut him off. One of the crew, she continued, "Go and fetch the passengers." I fled as fast as I could, but stumbled in the dark. I was unceremoniously seized and dragged to the floor of the bridge, where Renuga held her pistol to Captain Go's head. Monsieur Fogg was tossed beside me soon after. "Is this your solution, First Mate?" I asked despairingly. "We don't want to be sold off to the highest bidder." He turned to the captain. "We have worked alongside you for 10 years. We gave you our loyalty, our blood, and you cast us aside for some land-grubbing woman." "This is mutiny," I shouted, trying to shock her out of her course. First Mate Renuga's lip curled. "What about a captain abandoning ship? He sold us as a wedding present. Don't we deserve more?" "Perhaps you do," I nodded, seeing the frustration on the crew's faces. "It is unfair, I agree." "The ship is my home," First Mate Renuga breathed, as the crew stamped its feet and shouted their agreement. "I cannot let her go, even if our captain can." Something seemed to break in Captain Go's expression. He leapt upon his first mate with a suddenly startling ferocity, and they began to grapple for the pistol. I tried to stop First Mate Renuga. The pistol jerked and the bullet punched a hole through the outer hull above us. I heard a shrill whistle of air before we were knocked to the floor by the sound of an almighty explosion. I looked up, and half the top deck was sheared away and swinging free, and the entire envelope had ignited into a glowing, writhing ball of fire. Wind whipped past us. We rolled and tumbled in the air. We were falling uncontrollably. And then we hit the water, and I slipped into glorious, terror-free unconsciousness. Well, things certainly took a turn for the worst, haven't they? Now, give me just one moment. Just gotta tweet out a reminder, make sure that anybody who isn't currently watching and might be interested can have a chance to come in and say hello. Check out the stream. Alright, back to the game. I awoke and I had not drowned, which was more than I expected. My head was upon Monsieur Fogg's lap. The emergency protocols have activated and we have been sealed into the bridge, he informed me in lieu of a greeting. I tried to sit up and Monsieur Fogg pushed me unceremoniously back down. I felt relatively well considering this whole accursed journey of ours. "You cracked your skull," my master declared. "This is not the first time you have awoken. Every time you sit up, I explain matters and you swoon once more." "Are you unharmed, monsieur?" "You have not asked that before," my master smiled. "What are you?" "I'm somewhat injured," my master said serenely, and then coughed an enormous amount of thick, oozing warm blood onto my chest. I tried to sit up, only for Monsieur Fogg to slump heavily against me. His brow felt clammy and fevered. "We have a much larger problem than our injuries, Passepartout." His voice was uncharacteristically raspy. "I think your injuries still signify, monsieur," I remonstrated. In response, Monsieur Fogg tipped my head up a little. I saw the heavy glass windows of the bridge. Instead of pale blue sky and clouds, I saw only dark water, pitted by air bubbles rushing away. "We are sinking," Monsieur Fogg continued, regaining some of his composure. "And Captain Go informs me we have only a day's worth of air at most. So then we will die here." I saw Monsieur Fogg almost smile in the murky darkness. It seems a distinct possibility. We sat together in the dark for an hour or more without saying another word. I heard the captain and first mate working together, tending to the injured crew, whispering encouragement, and lighting our dwindling stock of candles to give the illusion of warmth despite the deepening fear and bone-chilling cold of the ocean, which promised little mercy. I confess I did not account for this possibility, he said into the dark. Not all risks can be calculated, I said thoughtfully. I drew in my breath. I do not blame you. I felt Monsieur Fogg tense. I am surprised. It is my job to surprise you. Another long silence, but a softer one. I felt the pain in my head pound at my temples and then recede, like waves on a shore. My master coughed more blood, and we all shivered as the last candle blew out. Someone wept, but I did not. Why did you take the wager, monsieur? I asked. I do not think I expected him to answer. I thought I knew, he said faintly, but now I am not certain. And later, much later, after the hull began to shriek and as the air grew thin, I think I heard my master say, perhaps given our circumstances, you should call me Phileas, before I fell into an uneasy, delirious sleep. A series of dull shudders went through the remains of the airship, and Captain Go staggered to his feet. It's been an honor serving with you, he said, his voice admirably steady. Nihinsa, will you forgive me? First Mate Ranuga stood up, her eyes glittering. Only if you will forgive me in turn, Captain. I pulled myself to my feet, not wanting to die lying down unless it was at the age of 90 in a goose feather bed. The ship jerked, but instead of cracking open like an oyster shell, it began to rise up in the water. Our faces were frozen in shock, our eyes wide, our mouths open. We shot upwards, faster and faster until we broke the surface and the sun blinded us with his sweet yellow light, casting shadows away with its brilliance. I could think of nothing to say, but am I delirious, monsieur? My hands threw themselves over my eyes to shield the glare. No, my master said coolly. You are rescued. Look. I followed his indication and looked up. Indeed, in the sky hung a colossal airship. Thick steel cables were attached to our vessel, and we were slowly winched out of the water. A bulkhead door swung open on that ship, and a woman in a welder's mask and armored suit stood limbed? In light? I'm gonna have to start a list. This game is teaching me words I've never heard of. Hello down there, she called loudly, as Captain Go gasped. Have any of you seen my husband? Monsieur Fogg is not doing well at all. Madame Go, the banker, proved to be an excellent rescuer. She retrieved our bags, provided us with quantities of stew, and had thought to bring a team of doctors. Captain Go trailed around behind her, looking, if possible, even more love-struck than before. I looked in on First Mate Ranuga, who was recovering nicely in one of the hastily set-up medical bays. Captain's not going to sell the ship, she told me excitedly. And all I needed to do was try to shoot him. Maybe don't use that as your first choice of action next time, though. Just an idea. Monsieur Fogg, with bandaged ribs and a pair of impressive black eyes, was on his feet, much against the doctor's orders. Please, stay in bed, monsieur, I said despairingly, knowing all too well the determined look in his eye. Passepartout, he said, and then trailed off most uncharacteristically. I said nothing. Thank you, he said briskly, then opened up his ledger. Now leave me in peace till we reach Singapore. From here on, he said, his eyes flashed. I'm going to ensure I consider all of the possibilities. And finally, we have made it to Singapore. Singapore was a British colonial port peopled largely by Chinese, Malays, and Indians, and fueled by rubber exports and opium wealth pouring into the new banks. I walked along the harbor front and spied brightly painted airships and well-rigged boats heading for distant ports. I inquired about vessels headed for eastern Australian town of Brisbane, and a rubber merchant laughed bitterly in my face. We have no business with them. Criminals and colonists. Why would any Singaporean go there? I left this thoroughly unpleasant woman behind and moved on to ask instead about the Dutch-held city of Batavia, and a Chinese sailor pointed me in the direction of a sailboat which bore the rather insalubrious name Spicy Jake. I wouldn't go to Batavia even if you paid me a king's ransom, the sailor chuckled. I'm not asking you to. I turned away from the impertinent fellow and his unsolicited advice. The sailor shook his head in annoyance and sloped away. First things first, to the market. We can sell our zoetrope. And our cricket ball. I will take this scented candle. And this tin sheet in case we go to Yokohama. And this hand mirror since we're heading probably for Brisbane. And that is 3 suitcases full. Now, pass an evening in Singapore. As night fell, I decided to take drastic measures to aid my master. In search of a doctor. He listened to my master cough. A mild fever, I would say. 2 days to recover to full strength. It was too long. We could not afford to wait. The doctor sighed, did what he could, and left. We have 2 days until this arrives. That's a bit pricey. Let's maybe not. Before turning in for the night, I attended to Monsieur Fogg once again, ensuring he was comfortable with the hopes he would have a comfortable night. Let's board Spicy Jake. Still gonna lose 9 points of health, unfortunately. The only boat we could find from Singapore heading through the Pacific Islands to the fort of Batavia was the Spicy Jake, a Dutch vessel crewed by decent men of fortune. I gulped with alarm, but we did not stay ashore. I shall proceed to attend to Monsieur Fogg as often as possible. The atmosphere around the pirates was tense, to say the least. We made a special effort to befriend them, which essentially meant I sat up on the sun-soaked deck and asked them to describe their bloody adventures in the mountains and tree-top ridges that we passed. They seemed keen to talk, and their talk of throat-slitting went on for many hours. I listened with a raised eyebrow and an expression of disgust. Okay, I kind of feel like I have to choose this third option. Just to see where it leads. It presumably can't be anywhere particularly good. I do believe you gentlemen are pussycats, I remarked when they were done, hoping to convince me they are tigers. The men stared at one another in surprise and fell into paroxysms of laughter, slapping me on the back. You, one declared, are a card. Then to Monsieur Fogg once more. Second day began with a Batavia in sight. The captain came and found us. I apologize if my men have made sport of you, he began in heavily accented English. They are children, cruel but kind-hearted. It is no matter, I replied foggishly. I get it. In the manner of his master. Cute. The captain nodded. Thank you for your trust, he said. Many treat us traders as pirates, but we are merely businessmen. He brought something from his pocket as he spoke. Speaking of business, I have a proposition for you. What manner of proposition? I asked courteously. I have been carrying this for some time, he said, opening his palm to reveal a small gleaming ruby. The dragon's eye, he said. How I got it is not important, only that I haven't been able to sell it. It is worth a few thousand to the right buyer. Yours for 300. I looked at the gem. It sparkled with bloody luster. How valuable it was I could not tell, but it was certainly not glass. You have a deal, I declared, trusting him. I counted out 300 pounds, and he placed the ruby into my palm. May it bring you more luck than me, he said ominously. With that, he swept away. We made port a few hours later. You know what? Let's not worry about money right now. Because we do have nearly 7,000, so we should be fine. Let's check the market. Get another scented candle to sell in Brisbane. Might need these. Part of the frequent flyer set, it says. Probably won't hurt to have. New routes have been discovered. Wonder where those two are going. Is that Brisbane? Yeah, one of them is. Oh, goodness. Apologies for any interruption that might have caused. Give me just a moment. Alright, here we are. The heart of Heavenstad, the exalted city of Batavia, was a floating fort of gigantic iron struts built over the swamplands of Calibesser and overlooking the Sunda Kalapa harbor. Dutch hotels and Chinese settlements dotted with Buddhist shrines pushed themselves up in the shadow of the walls, hemmed in by the sprawling, unplanned Javanese kampongs. I hailed a carriage to tour the city. The main mode of transportation within the city was the harimau, a flat-bottomed steam carriage shaped and painted like a tiger, with paddle wheel claws which allowed it to cross canals and navigate swampland. It was surprisingly comfortable despite its demonic, smoke-belching, scarlet-enameled eyes. We ventured further south, careening through the lively fish market, of low-roofed stalls and strange delicacies. Dense settlements sprawled labyrinthine between the large Dutch colonial buildings as we went further from the walls. A huge explosion resounded to the north. Paramount stopped. People in the street were pointing. I questioned my driver, who merely sighed and said, "Rebels." I waved him to drive on, and we turned about sharply, though the going through the crowds was slow. It was late by the time I made my return to the docks. I was more than ready to depart the exalted city. It was not so much floating, I realized, but rather teetering on the very brink of disaster. We took a room at the Hotel de Indies, a fairly comfortable establishment overlooking the water, a perfect place to rest. Though through the window we heard the sounds of explosions and shouting long into the night. It seemed Batavia itself was not a comfortable place after all. Alright, I don't think we'll be making it to Yokohama. So we might as well sell that. That's definitely going to be worth something in Brisbane. Worth holding on to. Part of the Seafarer set. I don't think we'll be making it to Calcutta. Or Hong Kong, possibly. That should do. 3 suitcases. We boarded the Leyden, a Dutch submersible en route from Batavia to Brisbane. It had a crew of 5 and a surprisingly large cargo hold, which had been converted into our quarters. We swapped a hold full of rifles and gunpowder for a couple of Englishmen, Captain Rosencrantz joked. We are more dangerous, I smiled suavely, and the captain guffawed and clapped me on the shoulder. Well, you wouldn't fetch the same price at Akir, which is all that matters to me. The captain shook her head. Welcome aboard. It will be a beautiful journey to Brisbane, mark my words. Greetings, first mate. You're the Frenchman, right? I'm very interested in Brisbane. I hear Brisbane is expanding into the bush. Can you travel from Brisbane to Auckland? Absolutely. There's a regular hot air balloon service from Brisbane to Auckland, but the fare is extortionate. Isn't everything nowadays? What else do you know about Auckland? Let me tell you, you can pick up harmonicas in Auckland, extremely valuable in New Orleans. I'm kinda hoping we'll make it to New Orleans at some point in our journey. So it might not be the worst idea to pick up a harmonica if we can. First day's journey was along the surface of the water, although as I understood it, we were descending extremely slowly throughout. I was happy enough and enjoyed the light through the top-level portholes. But towards evening, we finally dipped under. The view became dim. There were not even any fish. I lit the lamps and tried to pretend I was in a building. Attend to Monsieur Fogg. The crew were in fine fettle, and the larder was well stocked. Apparently selling weapons was a lucrative business. I found the smell of... I think discomfort is supposed to be discomfort. Just a hunch. I found the smell of gunpowder rather discomforting and slept badly. Monsieur Fogg was not similarly afflicted and settled himself onto the observation deck with his ledger and a pencil, roundly ignoring the magnificent seascapes that were murkily illuminated by the Laden's enormous phosphorescent lamps. So, I'm beginning to get the impression, looking at this as a Star Trek fan, essentially, Phileas Fogg, is Tuvok, and Passepartout is more akin to Harry Kim. If anyone watches Voyager, they'll probably appreciate that reference. And to Monsieur Fogg again. I want to try and get him back up around 80 and 90 if I can. Keep bumping the mic, I apologize for that. Captain Rosencrantz wanted to show me her collection of diving suits. They were armored in copper plate and fixed with iron spikes all over. Why are they covered in spines? I queried, running my fingers along their sharp points. Just in case a shark tries to take a bite out of you, the captain replied with a smile. I laughed at her joke, and she looked at me blankly. Tell the truth, she said, relenting. They're armored against the attacks of other men and not sea creatures. Though I was glad of it when I stared down the sharp-toothed maw of a great white last year. I hefted one of the helmets in my hand. It was heavy and leather-lined, with thick plate glass lenses, with polished tortoise-shell surrounds at the edges. Are you afraid of the water? The captain asked. What sane man is not? I challenged. The ocean is a powerful thing and not to be trifled with. Captain Rosencrantz regarded me levelly. I find a great sense of peace in the ocean when I dive. Perhaps you should try it. I do not think I would find it peaceful. She said, but I suspected it would not be the end of our conversation on the matter. This is a rather long trip. Great Barrier Reef is one of nature's great wonders, Captain Rosencrantz said to me at breakfast, holding out a diving helmet with one hand. Would you like to experience it up close? You know what, why not? I accepted the helmet eagerly and followed her to the preparation chamber, where I managed to put on my spiked diving suit without puncturing myself. Wonderful. Any advice? I asked. Breathe deeply. I remember that the creatures out there are more afraid of you than you are of them, said she, adding, your dive will be easy. She fitted my helmet and checked the seal. The air inside tasted stale. I lumbered behind her into the airlock and watched as the captain closed the hatch behind us and made a thumbs-up gesture at me. I returned it. I saw her smile behind the glass of her helmet. Then she pulled a lever, and the outer door slid slowly open. Seawater began to pour into the now unsealed chamber. The captain grabbed the back of my suit and pushed, and I was in the water, and sinking till my feet hit the ocean floor. Hello, kitty. My cat has decided to come and say hello again. Silly girl, what's she doing? Oh, excuse me. Excuse me, baby. That's where the mouse is. I need that. I flailed and took panicky breaths, until I realized that I was not drowning. I was not drowning! The mud and sand I had kicked up with my landing settled. I felt a tug on one of my air pipes, and the captain was standing beside me, but oh, beyond her, the reef. Pillars and archways of living coral made an arcane temple of the ocean floor. I've never seen colors so bright, deep flushing pinks and indigo blues, searing orange and butter yellow. I lumbered into a school of zebra-striped fish and laughed inside my helmet as they flicked and darted all around me, close as a heartbeat. The captain kept close watch on me, but I felt still and calm and serene underwater. Outside was a carnival of color, but I could hear only my own breathing in my head, as though I were sitting in the eye of a flash-finned storm. We saw stingrays and black-tip reef sharks and cuttlefish which glowed and changed color, and even a new sunk shipwreck only dashing itself to pieces on the coral. I walked heavily alongside a sea turtle, and followed an enormous stone-colored fish as big as a cow which nudged up against my hands, tame as a cat. I wondered what it thought of me, pale and shivering inside my suit of iron shikes and armor... Spikes. Shikes. What the fuck is a shike? Iron spikes and armor plate. And I wished I could stay down there and scuttle along the ocean floor forever. He talks about following a turtle, and that just made me think of a Henry Rollins story. I forget what show it was. You can find a lot of Henry Rollins stuff on YouTube. He's fantastic. And, this is one story he's got about when he went to Australia to go, like, diving at the Great Barrier Reef. And he starts following a turtle, and he gets separated from the rest of the group, so he has to swim, like, 2 miles to get back to the boat. Obviously an exaggeration, but that day, Henry Rollins found out just how out of shape he was. I returned to my master bearing an intricate coral sphere, as though a snowflake had spun itself into a ball. Are you intending to take that with us? My master asked, and I shrugged. It was, after all, a true treasure of the deep. Should fetch a good price in Auckland. Not a bad idea. We surfaced a few miles off the coast of Brisbane, and so Monsieur Fogg and I stood on deck as we approached. Sharks followed the submersible curiously, and the crew amused themselves by giving them incongruous names. I offered my own suggestions of Clementine and Balzac, and Ernestine, who was a rather fearsome governess who had given me nightmares in my tender youth. Captain Rosencrantz gave us a little one-handed salute as we disembarked in the sparse pioneer town of Brisbane. We were settled into a hotel by Balimba Creek in the suburb of Carina, surrounded by sugarcane, little vineyards, and miles of bush, thick with wallabies, bears, iguanas, snakes, and all manner of murderous native wildlife. Hello, kitty. Now is not the time. Give any noise as I attempt to adjust my microphone around the cat. Love you, your baby. Will lay down? There's a certain beauty to the land, I said to one of the maids, an indigenous Murray girl in a starched cotton uniform. It's very built up now, she lamented. Is that so? I asked, surprised. She nodded. Even a few years ago, my clan would hold corroborees in Cairncross and on Cannon Hill. Now the hills are stripped of useful timber. Native police destroy our settlements, and the white farmers take our ceremonial land. And you worked in a hotel, I remarked. He gave me a wary look and said woodenly, I support my family. I am very grateful for my job. Of course, I work myself, as you can see. She looked around the comfortable, clean hotel room. What you do does not look like work. I bowed my head at that. She pulled a scribbled letter out of her pocket and handed it to me. What is this? I asked. Why don't you read it if you want to know, she suggested, waving an encouraging hand at me. I read the letter closely. It was a letter of complaint, protesting at the treatment of the Aboriginal peoples by the white settlers. It was well written, if a bit smudged. I am going to send it to the Moreton Bay Courier. I will take it for you, I replied, coming from a man such as myself. A white man? Indeed so. She hesitated, her hand still holding one corner of the letter. How do I know you will not simply throw it into the sea? I have no reason to do such a thing. You have no reason to help me, she replied. She tucked the letter back into her pocket and picked up her duster. I wish I could just leave this place and forget it, she sighed. As you will. I wish it did not matter to me. Things change, but I have found that new ways always open up. For you, perhaps, and those like you. But there are always people left behind. As she turned and resumed her cleaning, I wondered what it would be like to be so tied to one place that you clung fast even as others tried to wrest it from you. I imagined this town in 20 years' time. Solid stone buildings and a built-up harbor. Trees pulled from the ground and mulched in factory mills. It was impossible and perhaps inevitable. In my mind's eye, every face was starched paper white. I fell into a dizzied, unquiet sleep in the black night, pierced with the sounds of shrieking birds and animals howling against the churn of sugar mills. Just gonna wait a second for the market to open up. Because I know I have a few things that'll do well here. I would like to take a harmonica with us. I don't know if we'll get to Acapulco, but what's the harm in carrying a didgeridoo? Explore a bit, see what we can learn. That's a secondary route that'll bypass Auckland altogether. And where does that even go? Somewhere in South America, it looked like. One of the laden's crew waved frantically at me from across the street. Passepartout, she gasped. Over here. I crossed over to her and noticed that she was supporting herself with wooden crutches. Her left shin was bound up and splinted. I need your help, she said, putting an ether rag to her face and inhaling deeply. Please. What happened to your leg? I asked, wincing a little at the purpled flesh I could see above the bandages. It's broken, she said. Captain left me here to get it healed, but Passepartout, the surgeon, is a quack. He wants to amputate my foot. Perhaps he is right, I offered weakly, glancing at her fractured leg. I can't be a submariner with one leg, she said desperately. I love the laden. You could try a replacement limb? Gave me a bleak look. See any artificers here? I'd end up with a wooden peg and a parrot, more like. What do you want me to do? I replied. I am no surgeon. I need to put a notice in the paper for a decent bone setter, the woman continued. The offices are in Moreton Bay, and it's too far for me to hobble. How far exactly is it? I asked warily. Only a few miles through the bush. I will take your notice, I said with a sigh. The walk was long and arduous in the heat. But after an hour, I was still determined. My kitty has decided to lay down next to where my hand needs to be for the mouse. Silly girl. What you doing? I'm gonna scooch you a little. There we go. Okay? Feel comfy? Okie dokie. Baked dust sent dizzy trails spinning into the air, and strange creatures chittered in the scrub on either side. A man, I realized, could drop dead on these paths and not be found. This was a vast and empty country. Perhaps the last such on Earth, or so it seemed to me. Yeah, most of Australia is just nothingness, filled with animals that will kill you. Also, there's a fun story about how in World War II the Japanese planned to conquer Australia. How they even drew out maps with prefectures and everything. And the Australians had what they called the Brisbane Line, whereas basically they can have everything north of Brisbane, nobody gives a fuck. It's just wilderness up there. I walked on, my feet growing more sore and worn with every step. I walked on, eventually reaching a small settlement around Moreton Bay. The shoreline was beautiful and dotted with little fishing boats, but I saw no large buildings and nothing that resembled a newspaper office. I asked the first person I passed, a woman carrying several loaves of fresh bread. He said, "What?" she demanded. I asked again, more slowly. "The Moreton Bay Courier. I have a notice for them." There's clearly a confusion. The Courier? What, the paper? Yes, that's right. Another laugh. You came to Moreton Bay to visit the Courier? Indeed so. Friend, came the reply. The Courier's in the city, in Brisbane. Obviously it's named after the bay, that's all. It's not here. Why would newspapermen and their want to live out here? I stared in horror. Hey, did you walk here? You must be half dead. A few people were gathered around me now. One gave me a cup of water, taking something from my hand to give it to me. I confess I felt rather weak and I drank. They sat me down in the shade. My head span and lapsed into fitful unconsciousness. A few minutes passed and I began to feel more myself as the water revived me. Listen, one man said sympathetically. I'm on my way to town right now. If you want to ride, if you're well enough to ride. Pardon me? Goodness. Okay. The man loaded me up into his cart and ripped the reins. And soon we were rattling alongside the dusty road once more. Trees that had crawled past now skimmed by in the other direction. "So what do you want with the Courier anyhow?" he asked. "You look like a foreigner to me." "I intend to give them this notice," I replied, reaching into my pocket to bring out the missive. But the notice was not in my pocket. Not in either pocket, nor under my seat. Nor in my jacket. I skipped a word. I began to search around in some alarm, my driver looking at me with quiet interest but not slowing the cart. "I had a notice," I insisted. "It was in my hand." He looked blank. "You're clutching a filthy handkerchief, wet with sweat," he corrected. "I think someone got you a fresh one." There was nothing I could do. In my staggering from the heat, I had lost the submariner's vital notice. I could not even recreate it from memory, for I did not even know the woman's name. Finally, we returned into town, and I was dropped near our lodgings. The woman was waiting for me in the shade of one of the town's drinking dens, her face pale and sweaty in pain and heat. "You've been so long," she said. "Well, did you place my notice?" Okay, right-clicking is a bad thing. Still gasping for breath, I replied, "The newspaper is not there, but here in this town." She looked at me blankly. "Then give me back my letter and I will deliver it." "I can't," I shook my head. "I lost it." She looked outraged for a moment, then shook her head. "Then I will write another notice and deliver it myself, since the office is nearby." "I am sorry," I said in defeat. "It was unforgivable of me." "You found out that the Courier is in this town," she said. "For that in itself you have my thanks." With that, she limped away, ever more determined to find her bone setter and keep her leg. I wonder if she did in the end. Where is that? Lima. That's Peru. Okay, let's go to Auckland. That arrives tomorrow. Alright, we take another night in Brisbane. It's beginning to look a lot like Brisbane. At least we've almost made it off the continent. After 50 days. We took a room and settled in, and I attended to Monsieur Fogg, ensuring he had fresh tea with the intention he should have a comfortable night. He's finally back up over 50. I do not wish to go to Lima. I have things to sell in Auckland. Now it doesn't leave until 2 days from now. Goodness. Show me my luggage. What did I have for Auckland? coral sphere I was going to sell in Auckland. We leave tomorrow, we'll spend a little extra. No. Bad. One more night can't be bad for Monsieur Fogg's health. The last few hours of the evening, I afforded my master every service, providing him with fresh clothing with the hopes he would have a comfortable night. Stop trying to send me to Peru. How he fell into with Corporal Bruce McIntyre, retired, I cannot really say. Perhaps it was his cheerful smile when we encountered him on the streets of Brisbane. Perhaps my master simply has a knack for locating lunatics. Either way, we were snared into this little adventure, to fly to Auckland in a homemade hot air balloon. My goodness. Have you traveled by hot air balloon before? The corporal demanded as we drifted sedately across the sea. Indeed we have, I replied. You won't need me to tell you this is no normal balloon, he replied cheerfully. And it's overlooked ballooning as a way of getting about. Ballooning is good for the soul. My own soul, I felt, had rather gone into hiding rather than face the notion that it might become separated from its body at the slightest incident. Do you build this craft? Indeed, sir, and only from parts I could find in local rubbish dumps. He patted the side of the hanging burner, rather cautiously, I might add. This is most impressive. Not bad for a corporal. If the Queen's own engineers could see me now, they'd be in for a shock. All in all, I wished I had not asked him anything, so proceeded to ask nothing more. I continue to attend to Monsieur Fogg with every opportunity. Naturally, disaster chose its moment to strike, and that moment was when we were halfway. Nothing in view below but endless, blank, invincible ocean. Disaster in this instance took the form of a raging thunderstorm. Have you seen lightning strike the ocean? It's like something from the laboratories of the celebrated Dr. Frankenstein. Had we seen an electric whale with a bolt through its neck, I would not have been surprised. The winds began to pick up as the storm grew on the horizon, filling the sky and blotting out the sun. Oh dear, McIntyre remarked, pointing upwards. Someone's not happy with us. As long as we don't crash again, I'm fine. We did not hit the water. In fact, we made good time. The storm blew us along to within sight of the coast of New Zealand, and then just as sharply blew out. The magnificent craft of McIntyre held together through all that, and only at the last minute did it fall to bits, depositing us in the water. I found myself floating in the overturned basket. Monsieur Fogg on a suitcase. McIntyre disappeared into the water. And though I dived to find him, I could see nothing but in the storm-churned waters. We were alone, as the poet said, on the wine-dark sea. Monsieur Fogg bowed his head for a moment. I can hardly believe we survived. Monsieur Fogg did not agree. We have not yet survived, he remarked coolly. Land is still rather far away. You must summon help, I declared, raising the railway whistle with which I intended to call for aid. Monsieur Fogg frowned. I rather think you'll need more than that, he said. I did not have more, but I tried anyway. The sound disappeared across the empty, lonely sea. The evening wore on, and we began to slowly row our way in the direction we hoped of shore. You'll be unsurprised to hear that progress was slow. But after several hours of hard labor, we were in fact rescued by none other than a group of men in a canoe fitted with an outboard motor. They hauled us aboard with some purpose. I offered a simple explanation for our predicament. We came out to fish, the lead canoeist replied. Whitefish, looks like. I get it. Sopping, tired, cold, and clinging to our remaining cases, and shivering to the bone, we had no reason to argue. The motor was revved, and we returned to land that evening. I browsed around, my ears open, investigating the various ways in which we might continue. Might as well buy another harmonica. And some tobacco, just in case we wind up in Port-au-Prince. Let us travel to Lima. I think that said we'd lose 18, but gain 21, so that's good. The only ship heading east from Auckland was a trading airship loaded up with a vast quantity of kiwi fruit. Captain, one Maya Tahayo, was a Rubenesque woman who was eating even more kiwi fruit as we met her, scraping the skin off with her teeth and chewing them up whole. She offered us each one, and I took it gratefully, feeling as though it had been several weeks since I had eaten anything fresh. So, she declared, "You're going to Lima?" "You're going around the world," I replied, or intended to, at least, but she cut me off after the first syllable. "Excellent, let's waste no time." My master nodded with approval. The airship slipped its rope, and we were aloft. For dinner, we ate succulent beefsteak topped with grilled kiwi fruit, and drank a kiwi fruit-based wine. By the end of it, I was plucking small brown hairs from between my teeth. "Peruvians can't get enough of kiwis," she said. "I'm one of the first to think of importing them, and they slice them up and put them in beer. I think it makes them more," and she demonstrated with a gesture I could not understand. "A more lucrative market, I'm sure," I replied. "Oh yes," she agreed. "They have plenty of money these days, so why shouldn't I take a bite?" She plucked another fruit from the table and bit into it. "Why are you two fine fellows going to Lima?" I began to answer more cautiously this time, but was once more cut off as an alarm began to sound from the cockpit. "Hell's teeth," Captain Tahayo cursed, raising from the table. "It's a bird stuck in the guy ropes. I have to let it down." "A bird? Aren't we very high?" "Been there since we took off. They nest in the ropes, and then they get in a mess when they try to escape. These flightless birds, you see, any excuse to try and get airborne." And so saying, she retired. The next day, we were subjected to a lecture on the provenance of the kiwi fruit. "It's actually from China," she said. "I'm not just one of the first exporters, I'm one of the first plantation growers. Well, it was my husband's idea." "And what happened to him?" I inquired. "Tough buggers to grow," she continued, not listening to my question. The conversation was tiring me already. I began to find myself glazing over into a fog-like distant stare, and wondered for the first time if my master's great cool arose from his intelligence and not his awkwardness after all. So thinking, I completely missed the captain's explanation of her fruit, so completely that I cannot tell you what it covered. Captain had not noticed my inattention and was still talking. I patiently listened until she tired and took her leave to tend to her craft. As we settled down for the night, Monsieur Fogg remarked, "We have gained ourselves a day, Passepartout. We have crossed the date line." My master was, of course, correct. Imagine what might have transpired had we forgotten. A less precise man than Monsieur Fogg might have finished on the 80th day and yet believed himself to have lost. "What do you make of our captain?" my master asked, in an astonishing moment of human interest. "I find her tedious," I admitted. "I fear her company every time she approaches." Monsieur Fogg nodded. "She's quite deaf, of course." I stared at him. "Are you quite sure?" "It was a simple matter of observation," Monsieur Fogg replied. "You do well to remember that she cannot understand you unless she can see your lips as you speak." We saw the captain later. I put Monsieur Fogg's theory to the test, ultimately speaking away and facing her. The resulting conversation was most inconclusive. Certainly she spoke across me and did not listen, but perhaps she was simply a bore. Well, as Morrissey says, the world is full of crashing bores. So I asked her, being something of a bore myself, "Captain, are you deaf?" She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed. "My hearing is not so good," she says. "I was working on the ground near where our first airship exploded. The last sound I heard clearly, now I only have a ringing." I nodded. Perhaps you will return, I said, but she had turned her face away, so she did not see my reply. Excuse me, she murmured in that strange, thick accent of hers, and hurried away to tend to her vessel. Ask her about Lima, where we can go from Lima. I'd rather not go south from Lima. I'd rather go up towards Murica. So, the captain inquired, why are you going to Lima? Just one moment. My nose is stopping up again. Alright, I have returned. Apologies for the brief disruption, distraction. I had a word, and I seem to have lost it. Also, a friend just texted me and said that they have joined the chat, so welcome to them. So, the captain inquired, why are you going to Lima? We're going around the world. Are you now? Then are you almost done? I hope so. I'm sure of it, the captain replied reassuringly. I've traveled to this part of the world often, and I can tell you things are much more spread out in this hemisphere. Fewer cities, more wilderness. It'll take you much less time to cross South America, so long as you do not succumb to its many diseases. I shuddered at the thought. So far we have been fortunate, I agreed, though in my heart I knew I did not believe it. The captain nodded thoughtfully. Of course, she said, it would be faster to go to Panama City than to Lima. From Lima, it will take you 8 days to reach the east coast of the continent. Panama City, with the right funds, you can do it in, what, maybe 3? We were heading for Lima, I declared, most upset. There's no way to change it now. Of course there is, the captain replied, her voice shifting gear to something more like a purr. I have to toss my cargo overboard, of course, but it would go rotten before we arrived. But I could divert the ship. We cannot countenance the loss of so much fruit, I replied with a wry smile. Then buy it from me, she said, without the slightest twitch of shame. Say 18,000 pounds. Could we owe you after we win the bet and get back to London? I shook my head. That is too much. The captain nodded. Then perhaps I will make you a discount. I'll do it for 5,000. That is quite a discount, I remarked. Then take it, she replied. Very well. I paid the captain her money, and she retired to the bridge. Gradually, the great airship came about in the sky. The good thing I've been trying to gain as much money as I could. Even perhaps taking the slower routes. Captain Tauhio. Have I been saying that differently this whole time? I don't remember. It's been a while. Captain Tauhio had a lever for everything, including, it seemed, a lever to dump her entire cargo contents into the ocean. He put her gloved hand to it and then paused. Would you like to do the honors? Did we not save some? She shrugged. I've eaten far too many kiwis and will most certainly eat more. I couldn't care less. She tugged the lever. There was a sudden jolt as air rushed into the cargo bay and kiwi fruits tumbled out. They trailed behind us, forming a gray-brown arc through the sky, as though a ribbon trailed from behind our boat into the sea. We watched as sea creatures gathered to eat, thrashing the water into foam with their enthusiasm. At least they had not gone thoroughly to waste. My goodness, we certainly are making better time. So our long, fruit-filled journey came to an end as we lowered into the city of Panama. The captain came to bid us fond farewell, shaking us both by the hand with a grip like a stonemason. Monsieur Fogg paused on the ramp as we were leaving and turned back to face her. Madame, stated he, quite seriously, I think you are a most exceptional creature, and I take great delight in your efficient business practices. The extraordinary speech concluded, he donned his hat and turned, and I stared at his retreating figure. Emotion? Gallantry? Too much kiwi fruit in the belly? Needless to say, I never broached the subject. Panama City seemed a town perpetually on the edge of disaster. A great number of the inhabitants had immigrated to California during the gold rush 20 years ago. The 49ers, as they were called. And had left empty spaces, which were quickly filled by new immigrants, creating a multiracial, polyglot society. It was a nowhere town, so steeped in immigrant cultures and influences that it had no true character of its own. It felt precarious in some respects, unfinished. Of course, there was the canal. The French had bought the rights of construction from the Colombians, but quickly ceded those rights to the Haitians after the disease had decimated their engineering corps. Haitians now virtually ran the city with their foreign wealth, and so the local rumor went, the blood-drinking voodoo machines they used to dig up the canal. I avoided every aspect of it, not wanting to discover whether French blood was particularly effective for powering diggers. Day 60, Monsieur Fogg murmured that night in his sleep, and still some distance yet to travel. Harmonicas are worth quite a bit here in Panama City. It's not where I intended to sell them, but it'll do. A forged Englishman's passport in the name of Jack Passenger. I am going to sell the Darjeeling tea here, and I shall buy the iron ore, in case we make our way up to San Francisco. I'm glad to see that a path is opening up to the north. During the day, I strolled the streets, avoiding... there's yet another alarm. Happy 2018 to everybody in the, I want to say, mountain time zone. Honestly, I'm spacing out about what states are over in that area. I want to say probably part of Texas, the Dakotas, maybe. Like I said earlier, geography has never been one of my strengths. Pardon me. Now, continuing on. During the day, I strolled the streets, avoiding the digging works, only to find myself accosted by a group of Panamanian dynamite blasters. They were a mix of city boys and Choco immigrants from the villages, united by their dislike of the Haitian digging crew. They seemed keen to talk. He made a good choice refusing the Haitian devil. Chafil, the unofficial leader of the blaster crew, patted me on the shoulder. Their machines drink blood. They run on ordinary fuel, I am sure, I corrected, just like all machines. They guard that fuel like gold, and nobody knows what's in it. Chafil shared a dark look with his companions. We are leaving Panama before our blood ends up in a vat. You should leave too if you have sense. We are leaving, I shrugged, though I know not where. I am at my master's mercy. We are making for Tabatinga in the Amazonas. Chafil gave me a considering look. We may have some space for men of talent and determination. A little further on, I encountered someone quite different, a tall black woman overseeing one of the engineering sites who introduced herself as Fanchon. A visitor from France, she smiled lopsidedly. Have you come to take back your canal? It will not be so easy. She raised her fist playfully. Madame, I greeted her, and she shook my hand. I must ask, do the shovels really run on blood? She smiled. That is what they say? I have heard it. Is it true? Blood is a terrible fuel, and we would all be using it instead of coal or gasoline. We Haitians make our own organic fuel. We cannot rely on imports, you see, she explained, but did not elaborate further upon the exact constituents of the mixture. Madame, we are travelers looking to journey onward. I too am traveling on. I have she smiled, a little craft of my own devising, but it needs a few parts. You know how these things are. Is it a fast craft? The fastest, she nodded, when she works. My master and I are going around the world, I declared. How exciting for you, she replied, though I did not think she meant it, and her eyes were moving away into the middle distance. Perhaps we could travel with you, I asked, when your craft is repaired. She looked at me as though judging my character by inferring the way my pants fitted together. As I say, it will take some time to repair, or some manpower. Time and manpower, they are both realized by one thing. Name your price, I told her. She named a figure and it made my eyes water slightly. Well, it was not unfeasible. I nodded. We will consider it. Very good, she replied. I bid Madame Fanchon goodbye, at least until we decided whether we could afford such help as hers. Alright, we can head north towards Acapulco. One could hire a calash to travel the length of Central America, along which a good quality road had been established. There was only one curiosity. There was no driver. The carriage ran itself on a system of wheels, cogs, and leather straps. What if we encounter an unexpected obstacle, I demanded of my master, or a gap in the road? I'm confident the makers of this device have considered that, he replied as he stepped aboard. Come. Would that I shared that confidence, my friends. Still trying to get Monsieur Fogg's health back up after that airship crash some 20 days ago. On the map, the road to Acapulco seems to trace a hairline route along the curve of Central America, and I half expected the calash to teeter left and right between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. In reality, of course, the geography is much more expansive, and so instead we rode through long grasslands that flowed down the sides of mountains. Steering was automatic, another plus since I did not fancy my chances on the hairpins. A gauge installed by the crafty builders of the mechanical horse showed the distance to our destination, though I suppose it was only approximate and based upon the turning of the wheels. We rattled along in this contraption, my master and I, for once absolutely alone. Missed a chance there. I apologize. I looked away, checking the chat, just in case anybody was talking. On our second day, the carriage screeched to a sudden halt. Someone had laid a log across the road. I got out to move it, but as soon as my feet hit the dust, there was a shout. Don't move, we're taking your vehicles. I raised my hands and turned about. A lone figure rose from behind a rock, sighting along the barrel of a gun. Just want the vehicle, it's called in a thick Mexican accent. Don't want to hurt you, but I will. Come down and I'll help you move this log out of the road, I called. The figure took a few tentative steps down the hillside. And that was when I noticed Monsieur Fogg creeping through the scrub around the back of the calash. I decided to keep the figure talking. Must have been waiting here a long time, I said. We have water. Surely you're thirsty. What do you care if I'm thirsty? Demanded the figure. Monsieur Fogg was creeping ever closer. Just your friendship, I replied. We mean you no harm. Monsieur Fogg had now scrambled a little way up the mountainside and was behind the figure. What his plan was now I could not guess. I could hardly imagine him braining the bandit with a rock like a caveman. I reached into the carriage and brought out a carafe. Water, I called. Quite safe. I saw a movement beneath the figure's bandana, a licking of lips. At that moment, Monsieur Fogg stood up directly behind the figure. I covered my eyes, expecting violence, but he only spoke. Now then, my master said sensibly, perhaps we can all get on with our journey? The figure whirled about to face Mr. Fogg, and I called for calm. We can all travel together, I declared, peaceably. The figure shook his head and stepped toward the calash. I'm taking your carriage. Now get that tree trunk out of the road. At least let us take our cases from the caleche. The figure nodded. I'll throw them down to you. We moved the log, huffing and puffing. It took all three of us. We moved it, the kerchief slipped from the bandit's face, and for a moment I glimpsed Cupid's bow lips. I said nothing. The kerchief was quickly reknotted. Then we had the log removed. The bandit hopped aboard. Take us with you, I pleaded. Don't leave us out here. The bandit removed the kerchief, then waved her gun. Get aboard, she demanded roughly. He did not need to ask twice. We boarded to ride the rest of the journey into Acapulco in stony silence. I have to say, I really like that it seems like most of the important characters we come across have been women. I mean, I know this is a steampunk alternate history sort of game, but still a little surprising considering the time period. We completed our ride into Acapulco. The lady's name was Catalina Barraza, rolled R's. And she was going nowhere. Instead, she was running away. What from? Working conditions in the factory where I am employed. Here there's a better life to be had in Acapulco, and I no longer care not to try it out. But how did you end up midway to there? I was not midway, she replied. I am from San Miguel. Strange to think there are places in the world not on our map. I tend to think of the gaps between major ports as blank space. We rode the rest of the way in silence, and were grateful to disembark the caleche and stretch our legs. Indeed, several things could be sold here. There's not enough room for that. Again, in case we get to San Francisco, I will buy some sugar cane. We have just enough time to explore. The French had tenuous hold of the Mexican port of Acapulco. The bay was crowded with ships firing upon each other, and airships rained fire and misery down upon the slope-roofed buildings. French soldiers fought Mexicans in the smoke-wreathed streets. We decided to explore the city, the better to find a way to leave. We kept to the French-held docks and warehouses, where our white skin and my command of the mother tongue kept us from suspicion. You're not soldiers, a soot-stained Sioux lieutenant remarked, clutching his rifle close. This is a dangerous place for a civilian. We are merely passing through, I assured him, raising my voice over the shouts and rifle shot. What is the French army doing here? Something about the Mexican government's debts, the Sioux lieutenant shrugged. I hate this goddamned city. You have damned it, not God, I replied sharply. I'm sure it was more congenial before you began bombarding it. Keep your head down, the Sioux lieutenant roared, as a rope of fire lit a nearby building. He led us to a warehouse, which had been converted to a makeshift garrison. My master and I huddled there until evening fell, and the bombardment of Acapulco paused for the night, but we still did not have a way out. We stayed the night in a villa run by a local woman whose instinct for business had survived even the conflict raging on the streets. Another guest arrived, a woman fresh into town. I demanded to know how she had made the journey, and she shrugged. There are automatic carriages that depart from the outskirts and an airship to San Francisco. Surely everyone knows this. I thanked her profusely. Finally, a way to leave this hellish battleground. Several, in fact. Alright, now we have a way, presumably, up to San Francisco. And from there, we can start heading east. I almost had a Patrick moment and said west. Oh, we can actually depart now. Awesome. On the Bonaventura. Pardon me. Goodness. Captain of the Bonaventura swung down from the long rope ladder onto the muddy ground, nimble despite the long trained skirt that ruffled out from under her fitted jacket. She extended a hand to me, and I shook it, thinking her to be a modern sort of woman. Alas, her lip curled up in distaste. I'm Captain Isabella Acisara, she said in Spanish. You're a Spaniard? Ha! When I was a girl, the Mexican flag flew over California. Only for 20 years has it been American. You're a Mexican, then? Captain Acisara clutched her rosary bead so hard I feared she would snap the thread. I am no Mexican. I am Mutsun, and my people have lived in what you call California for thousands of years. We lifted from the ground with a jolt and left behind the battleground of Acapulco. What can you tell me of San Francisco? I've heard there are many Chinese immigrants in San Francisco. Can we get to Las Vegas? I don't think so. How about San Pedro? I believe so. Okay, that's kind of out of the way. Maybe not the way we want to go. Pardon me. Captain put out a coal-stained deerskin apron over her finery and buckled her flowing train out of the way as the boilers rumbled to life. How did you come to be a captain? Because I am a woman without a tribe and without land. My mother was forced into a Spanish mission and died of cholera. I will not be forced into a reservation by the Americans. But the reservation lands belong to you, do they not? Perhaps they promise that now, but what if gold is discovered on the reservation? Captain Acisara smiled grimly. What if the cities expand? How long will it be ours then? I went below when she was called away by our navigator, and was immediately knocked over by a dark-haired woman holding a notebook in front of her face. She blinked down at me. I dusted myself off with a shrug. Passepartout, at your service, madame. Didn't see you there, she replied cheerfully. I'm Mrs. Hunt. What is your opinion on the plight of the indigenous peoples of America? I do not know much of it, I admitted. I'm writing a book on the subject, she said, handing me her notebook. Did you know that last year's Indian Appropriation Act made all Native Americans wards of the state? Like orphans? Quite so. Not only are they taken from their families and homes, now the government tells them they never had tribes or nations to begin with. Madame Hunt snatched her notebook back. I'll be sending a copy to the president when it's published. I will look forward to reading it. She snorted. I'd be satisfied if he's the only one that does. Madame Hunt and Captain Acisara had an animated conversation over lunch. Apparently the captain was transporting Madame all over the Americas so she could interview various people for her book. Who did you interview in Acapulco? Many of the Franciscan friars who tended the Indian missions returned to Mexico after the invasion, Madame Hunt explained. The captain added, including Friar Bernardo, who knew me as a child. I apologize for the occasional pauses. My lips seem to be drying up the longer we go. So I keep having to take more and more drinks of water. Anyway. Is he as he remembered? Madame Hunt chuckled. Isabella told me that he was a veritable ogre, a terrifying personage. Captain's cheeks colored as Madame Hunt went on. He was an old, sweet little man. Now he is, Captain Acisara muttered. Lookout gave a shout and a whistle. We rushed out to the upper deck and saw the harbor of San Francisco Bay gleaming before us. I wished Madame Hunt luck with her book before we disembarked. We are close, Passepartout, Monsieur Fogg remarked, looking around at the busy streets of San Francisco. Do you feel it? We might be headed to New Orleans, so that might not be the worst thing to get a hold of. Hey, that might be worth something in Dallas. That was worth more in Dakar, but we are not anywhere near Dakar. I will buy the wax cylinder. Exactly how many guns do you think we need? That's a good question. We'll find out when we get to Dallas and make money off of it. At least I'm hoping we find a way to Dallas. San Francisco seemed less a city and more of a ravenous beast bent on consumption of everything, even of itself. Within the ever-expanding city limits, enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills, straightened roads, reformed neighborhoods, and dumped the resulting rubble and stone into Mission Bay. I sloped towards recently constructed Long Bridge, which was crowded with families out for a stroll, people fishing for silvery smelt with long poles. In the water was a jangle of rowing boats racing each other and boatmen taking passengers out to Mission Rock. Cheers and good-natured shouts emitted from a halfway house in the middle of the bridge. I peered at the halfway house and surmised from the revels I saw spilling out from its doors that it was some manner of drinking den. A man, red-faced and somewhat the worse for drink, bumped into me. I excused myself politely, and he made an apology in return, slinging an arm around my shoulders. "Oh, hello," he exclaimed. "You don't sound like you're from around here." "You do not sound American either," I retorted. "No matter. I was Dutch once in a past life. Now I am as American as President Grant. This is a land of newcomers. Are you a prospector?" "I am a traveler," I said. "I am traveling around the world." "Oh yeah?" he laughed. "And I'm a Navajo chief." I insisted on the truth, sketching out in brief some of my adventures with my master. "If you don't want to tell me, that's your business," he said finally. "You don't need to make up tall tales." A brown-skinned woman slipped her arm into his. I regarded her. She was wearing a ruffled walking dress in the latest European style, with a short tasseled jacket embroidered with the patterns of her tribe. "Ah, my manners." He shook his ruddy face. "I am Anders. This is my wife, Jenny." "Pleasure to meet you." I kissed her hand. She was surprised, but smiled. Always a pleasure to meet Anders' friends. He looked askance at the whiskey flask in his hands, but seemed to find me unobjectionable. I hesitated, the obvious question about her origins at the tip of my tongue. I swallowed back the question, though clearly with a visible effort, for she laughed with a full-throated pleasure. "I am of the Modoc tribe, what the new Americans call Indians." Jenny rolled her eyes. "I do not mind your surprise. Most of my tribe has been taken to the Klamath Reservation in Oregon." "But you are not with them," I observed, realizing my faux pas, the words tumbled from my unthinking lips. "I'll get the words right eventually, I promise." Jenny sucked in a deep breath. "I left my tribe," she whispered. Anders squeezed her hand. "I fell in love. In this world, women leave their families for their husbands. I made a home of my choosing, which is more freedom than what my tribe can claim." Anders whispered something into Jenny's ear, and she laughed, though I feared I had opened an old wound with my prying questions. I nodded and found my way back to Monsieur Fogg, who was sitting drinking tea with a disconsolate frown. "It tastes like soap," he remarked, but would say no more. I headed towards Chinatown to eat. It was a warren of crowded wooden and brick houses, temples, businesses, herbalists, laundries, and market stalls selling fruit and flowers. Pardon me. Brightly colored lanterns illuminated the streets, and little draconic automata spewing black smoke called the attention of passers-by to restaurants and gambling houses. A Chinese theater dominated one of the streets, having been imported from Shanghai and reconstructed in San Francisco. It advertised Chinese theatrical performances. Large groups of men stood around smoking, drinking green tea, and calling to each other good-naturedly. I felt quite at home. I had traveled around more than half the world after all. What was one more foreignness in such a foreign place as America? I decided to approach a young man with a queue ponytail, who was relaxing outside a small shop with his arms outstretched. He seemed to me to be a laborer. Despite his slender frame, his arms were heavily muscled. His name was Jing Huo, and he was enjoying his single day off from working on the Transcontinental Railway to New York. "What are you doing with your day?" I inquired presently. He sighed. "Sitting here, smoking. I would see my family, but..." He shrugged. "I have been away from home for a long time. Still, I should not complain. At least I have a job." "What do you do once the railway is complete?" Alas, I had little time to ponder this, as I had to bid him a hasty goodbye and return to my master. let's see. We might be able to get from Dallas, or from Burlington to Dallas. Do you think we should go to Omaha instead? Either way, we're not going to be able to leave until tomorrow. So I will leave this question to you in the chat while I take one more break to attend to my unfortunate stuffiness. So, has the jury reached a verdict? I'm assuming not, since nobody seems to have said anything. Which is fair. Just thought I would give you guys a little chance for audience participation. Action OK says everything's bigger in Texas. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. I need to get to Texas to sell some stuff, and I'm hoping that I will get quite a large check, or pile of cash, as it were. So, I am gonna aim for Omaha. We passed an anxious night, with our 80-day deadline looming. Every sunset seemed to carry extra weight. As night fell, I afforded my master every service, providing him with fresh clothing. Finally got him above 70. Things are improving. Now today, I'm gonna go for Omaha. We were lucky to arrive in San Francisco just in time to catch the inaugural journey of the Transcontinental Express, which would take us to New York in 8 days, with only a handful of stops along the way. The first day aboard was enjoyable enough. American trains could clearly not compete with their European counterparts, but it was amusing to see them try. Posters proclaimed Pullman's Palace sleeping cars. They were more like places to keep cattle, if reasonably well-to-do cattle. We sipped cool beer as we rattled through a long stretch of desert in the shadow of tall mountains. I attended to Monsieur Fogg and his delicate stomach, which was not entirely better today. Still recovering from our airship crash. But we finally gotten his health above 80, so I'm going to consider this a victory, and we can finally start exploring a little more. Our fellow passengers were a curious mix of gold and silver prospectors, homesteaders, farmers from all corners of the world, Mormons, missionaries, soldiers, and stiff-necked gentry of various sorts. I gave a young black woman with a deep red bonnet an infectious laugh, a wide smile. Her name was Diana. I'm meeting my husband in Cheyenne, she told me. He did construction work in New York, but New York isn't safe anymore. We have enough money to move now. How long have you been apart? Diana tilted her head and tugged on her bonnet charmingly. Oh, 10 years, she said breezily. I've been working in rich white ladies' houses in San Francisco, and he's been reconstructing buildings in New York. Constructing, not reconstructing. We've only just scraped up enough money to live together. He smiled, nearly glowing with happiness. Where else can one go but New York, I asked, thinking of our journey ahead. New Orleans, she replied. You can take the paddle boat down the Mississippi from Burlington, she laughed, though New Orleans is dangerous in its own way. We talked a little more, and the afternoon wore into evening as we passed by Ogden, close to Salt Lake City. We watched as passengers disembarked, glimpsing fertile fields of well-tended ranches out of the windows of the train. Phileas Fogg attempts round-the-world adventure. Interesting. So they've heard about us in America. Fogg Valet Dapper. Full report. I'm dapper. At least by American standards. Today, a fellow with a painfully trimmed mustache and impeccable suit approached me outside the lavatory. I nodded at him companionably, and his thin lips parted in a contained grin. I am Felix Granger, he said. You are a puzzle. I was utterly flummoxed. I, a puzzle? I repeated in consternation. Monsieur, I am a simple man whose past is an open book. Oh, no. Do tell me how you came to be on the Transcontinental. Thereby hangs a tale I can tell, good sir. He was merely interested in me and my adventures, and I saw no reason not to enlighten him in great and florid detail. His eyebrows raised higher and higher during my recitation. Then he said unsurely, "This is your first time in America." "Oh yes," I grinned. "A very strange place, you'll allow, monsieur." He seemed surprised. "Are we so strange?" He stroked his trim mustache. "Maybe we are at that, by God." We stopped at Cheyenne, Wyoming for a few hours in the evening. The trim-mustached fellow disembarked to talk with a 6-foot-tall woman who wore the latest slim-trained skirts and a pistol tucked into her waistband. We watched, none the wiser. At luncheon, I asked a sturdy-looking prospector who looked out of the carriage with an expression of palpable awe. "That's Esther Hobart Morris, the first woman justice of the peace in all of America," he said fervently. "Ain't she something?" The trim-mustached fellow boarded the train again before the last whistle blew, his face drawn and anxious. Monsieur Durant. Who's Monsieur Durant, I wonder? Answer me this. I don't suppose you have any idea who my father is? My apologies, monsieur, I do not. Oh, don't worry, you will. Can I get from Omaha to Dallas? Okay. Well, that wasn't very helpful. We know we can get from Omaha to Chicago, though. Hopefully we can find a way to Dallas. We arrived into Omaha Station without further incident, and the train disappeared on without us. Might have been worth more in Dallas, but it's worth something here. In case we go to Chicago, I will take another wax cylinder. Now, if you'll pardon me for just a second, I have something I need to attend to, and then we will proceed with the rest of the stream. I have returned. Another night, and the clock was forever ticking upwards. Before the night ended, I ran a few errands for the hotelier, earning £105. That's a pretty fair amount, especially considering we're in America. The smell of blood filled the streets of Omaha, billowing from the chains of abattoirs and meat houses along the river's edge that washed their waste out into the waters. "You look dapper," remarked an Irish woman, brushing past with a bleeding basket. I stepped quickly back, and she laughed at me. "I wasn't going to try and kiss you," she cawed. "What do you have in your basket?" I asked, somewhat warily. "Dinner," she replied, though it's just what I could slip out with the foreman noticing, she shrugged. "I'd offer you some, but I don't think you'd trust me." "Trust you how, madame?" I asked, confused. "Oh, madame," she mocked, then giggled. And with that, she wandered up the road, prattling to herself as she went. That's fair, I suppose. So it would appear that our only option for now is going to be Chicago. Not what I had in mind, but I suppose we'll take it. Our room was decent enough, but I was sure I would not sleep. Day 72. We made ourselves comfortable for the night, and I went to stretch my legs, and found a cheerful Irish madame who had lost a purse, which I helped to find, and who then, between fits of shouting, mentioned that there is no market in Ivujivik. I paid £1 for the information, and she nodded, then moved away. I'm not sure where that is. I've never heard of it before. Anyway, on we go to Chicago. It seemed there were no more trains heading east from Omaha for some time, so we were forced to hire an open carriage to carry us as far as Chicago. The ride was somewhat more uncomfortable than a railway, but not altogether that much slower. The road followed a roughly straight route and was kept well clear. As wool clothing. We had the carriage to ourselves, but of course my master did little to assist with the passage of time. So I was forced to sing a few songs from my childhood, beginning with Frère Jacques and Le Bon Roi Dagobert. I'm not good at French, as I said before. Apologies if I ruin everything. Before catching my master's eye and showing some mercy. He breathed a visible sigh of relief as I fell quiet. The carriage rolled on and we did not speak to each other. Fog spotted on fine form. On the second day, something truly unprecedented occurred. Passepartout, my master declared, I believe I must apologize. Apologize, monsieur? I demanded, truly shocked. Whatever for. You may act as you wish. There's something about this landscape that is most upsetting. I believe it to be the scale. I theorize no civilized man can live in America without losing some of his essential humanity. The open skies and distant horizons are simply too much to bear. I like the wilderness myself, monsieur, I replied. I find the sense of openness most freeing. Yes, he replied tightly, as I rather think you demonstrated, which is my point exactly. Monsieur Fogg said nothing more on the matter, and the carriage carried us across increasingly boggy land, till we began to pass wooden houses scattered about seemingly at random. Those were the outskirts of the city of Chicago. Walking the streets of Chicago, it quickly became apparent this was a city in a state of some flux, and in every way imaginable. From the wide variance of its diverse populace, who spoke in voices that hailed from Ireland, Sweden, and Austro-Hungary, to the arrangement of the city blocks themselves, for the blocks I discovered were in motion. Walking the busy streets, I was forced to stop more than once to make way for a family home set on rollers, moving like a strange, gigantic snail while its occupants calmly ate their dinner at the window as they went. A sign propped on the veranda read J.S. McIntyre Esquire House Movers. I turned about sharpish and walked through quieter streets for an hour or so more. I turned to Monsieur Fogg at our hotel sometime later to find, most curiously, that it now required a ladder to enter, having been raised several feet in the air by a team of men with hefty jack-screws. I gawped as the owner of the building struck his head out of the window to shake his fist at the work crew. One of them saw my attention and poked me hard in the chest. You just joined Chicago's most notorious work gang, he declared. We run this town. You must let me inside, I told him firmly. My master is waiting. $5, said the man, in or out. I gave the man £3 without much thought, leaving him a little puzzled as to how best to have the money changed, since the bank had recently disappeared down Main Street in the direction of the lake. We can sell some of this. That's not going to be worth as much as it would have been in Dallas. But take what we can get. I do not plan on going to Canada, if I can help it. I will take these, though, just in case. You know what? Yeah, let's take the Canadian timetable. Again, just to be safe. You never know where this journey might take us, as it clearly didn't take us where we wanted to go. And I see no way to leave Chicago. This is unfortunate. We only have 6 days left. Ah, there's something. We can go to Atlanta. I took a few hours to explore, learning possibilities for how we might go forth. Parts for Atlanta in 4 days. Good God. I'll pay extra to leave in 2. Day 75, what remained of the day. Helped the kitchen staff to clean, earning £100 in fees and tips. Did I just go north? Ah, fuck! I ruined everything! That's what I get for not looking. Oh boy. The train from Chicago to Winnipeg was a dented, ponderous thing made of blackened iron. It looked dependable, which was all I cared about in truth. It did not seem to be the sort of train to break down or veer off course or be beset by bandits. It seemed to lack the imagination somehow. Siege of Acapulco worsens. I encountered a Czech construction worker from Chicago with whom I fell into conversation. To find he was working on building the world's very first skyscraper in Chicago. 10 stories high with a frame of structural steel and completely fireproof, he boasted. Sounds more a train than a building, I remarked, indicating the compartment all around us. He laughed. Why should our trains be more modern than our houses and office buildings, eh? He rubbed his jaw. It's a good time to be in construction, I can tell you that much. I smiled at his enthusiasm, pleased to have met a man who had made history with his own 2 hands. Action OK says there's still time for a Christmas miracle. I'm hoping we can jump off the train at Duluth and then catch one going back the other way. There was some standing about to be done as the line changed from its southern reaches to its northern stretch. It occurred in the town of Duluth, the far western point of the enormous lake, which I avoided. For even looking at it made me terribly cold, and I had suffered quite enough head chills for our one journey. We reboarded swiftly and continued our journey in relative comfort. It was day 76. We had barely 100 hours remaining to return home. Hey, we've made it to Winnipeg, the home of Chris Jericho. At luncheon, a blousy, blonde-haired doctor took several of the passengers to ask for failing to wash their hands to task. I can read, I promise. Took several of the passengers to task for failing to wash their hands before taking their meal. Matters of hygiene are absolutely vital, she admonished. I meekly washed my own hands before settling to eat, not wanting to raise her ire. She cast me a quick, approving look and introduced herself as Dr. Lydia Berglund from the Chicago Board of Public Health. Any naysayers quickly fell into line at that pronouncement, and the normal proceedings of luncheon gradually recommenced. Dr. Berglund proved rather surprisingly an amiable enough conversationalist. To tell you the truth, Passepartout, she confided, what I really do for the Board of Public Health is design parks. What have parks to do with health? Parks are the lungs of the city, Dr. Berglund's eyes shone with the intensity of a zealot. This is what my mentor, the great Dr. Rausch, says. We are building parks all across the city with toilets and sanitation, closing down cemeteries full of festering corpses, making them places of health and greenery and community. Very admirable indeed, I remarked, which rather encouraged her to tell me about the latest park to be renovated in somewhat microscopic detail. Still, Monsieur Fogg was quite impressed when I relayed the conversation to him. Perhaps he was suppressing a yawn. I find it quite impossible to tell. Okay, so tomorrow we can leave. We're not gonna make it. We're not gonna make it to London by before day 80. Oh well. So it would appear that I've lost. It all began when my master and I turned a street corner in Winnipeg and found ourselves directly in the path of a galloping horse with no rider to control it. I flung myself back around the corner with a curse, toppling onto the cobbles. Monsieur Fogg, on the other hand, merely stepped back to avoid the clatter of iron-shod hooves. I dusted myself off, unable to avoid a twist of admiration at my master's preternatural calm. Well, remarked Monsieur Fogg dryly, that was dramatic. Indeed so, monsieur, I replied. We were not done yet. Moments later, the ground began to shake, and a cloud of dust and a clatter of hooves resolved into a posse of red-coated and mounted police. Beg your pardon, gentlemen, the fellow in the lead tipped his hat to us, a clear twinkle in his clear blue eyes. You haven't by chance seen a runaway horse go past? That's no horse for the beast from hell, I shot back caustically, and I pointed in a vague direction. Surely you can follow the trail of bodies. The red-coated Mountie looked me up and down before leaning over in his saddle and offering me his hand. Staff Sergeant James McLeod at your service. And you are? Thoroughly charmed, monsieur. I gave him my most dazzling smile. I mean, Staff Sergeant. He coughed, hiding a smile behind his hand. I'm sure you are. I told him that we planned to make our way to London by any means to hand. But there's some local knowledge for you, he offered. There's a little-known airship hangar at Ivujivik. Might be worth heading in that direction. We parted ways soon after. The staff sergeant had a horse to chase after, and as always, my master and I had a journey to plan. Oh, I understand now. That's... Leaves tomorrow at 9 a.m. That'll arrive Sunday. That'll arrive Friday. Well... Car fleet. That's interesting. Alright, we'll spend another night. We'll head north. Another anxious night. As night fell, I attended to Monsieur Fogg, ensuring he had fresh tea. We are certainly not going to make it in time. There are no rails across these lands, declared the woman who took our money and pushed a stack of furs into our arms. Nor airships. There is only one way to travel. With that, she slapped the bonnet of a steaming metal-wheeled car. Good luck. I was reassured by the many other passengers. Surely they would not all prove to be making a terrible mistake with their choice of transportation. You'd be surprised. San Francisco Chinatown riots. Seems like everywhere we go, things get worse when we leave. We headed for Ivujivik with a mixed party of our fur traders in a fleet of cars. The leader was a devoutly Christian Cree woman who introduced herself as Mary Johnson and insisted on prayers before every meal, even though many of her band did not share her faith. There's nothing to match the zeal of a convert, I supposed, and thought little more of the matter. Honk. Beep. The mariner dies during surgery. Doctor blames complications. That's unfortunate. The car engines had to be scraped and de-iced come morning. They were not lucky enough to have spent the night in a pile of beaver pelts as we passengers had. We left without delay and managed to reach the settlement of Winnisk on the shores of Hudson Bay by nightfall. At Winnisk, we boarded a heavy freight canoe fitted with a makeshift combustion engine and plowed straight across Angeekswaluk Ilua, or as the British called it, Hudson Bay. The canoe jagged to the left suddenly. The navigator shouted a belated warning. Ice flow. I seized Monsieur Fogg and dragged him away from the side of the canoe. I heard Monsieur Fogg take one sharp, indrawn breath, and with slow, crawling horror, saw his top hat jerk from the top of his head to catch the wind. Within seconds, it would be out of his grasp and plunging into the churning water of the bay. I declined to attempt a heroic rescue, which made Monsieur Fogg's attitude toward me chillier by several degrees. We turned off the engine and watched Monsieur Fogg's top hat sink beneath the waves with all due solemnity. Better a hat drowned to death at the bottom of the Hudson Bay than a dashing valet, after all. Thankfully, the remainder of our journey to Ivujavik passed without particular incident. As we lay down to sleep, Monsieur Fogg murmured, "Today is day 80, Passepartout. We have failed." "This changes nothing, however," he added. "We must still return home, and as fast as possible." It is a well-known fact that a traveler in search of advice would be well served to head to the nearest bar. And mes amis, that is exactly what I did as evening rolled around. I drank shots of homebrew liquor with a Dutch sailor who was mourning the loss of his third finger to frostbite. "Got 7 left, I suppose," he said with admirable aplomb. The bartender sidled up to the table to refill our drinks. She cut a dashing figure, an older woman with dark eyes and an easy, charming confidence. "New to town, are you?" "Passepartout, at your service, madame." I leapt up and sketched a bow, and was rewarded by a flash of her smile. She introduced herself as Madame Opique Einalik, and happily enough proved to be not only the bartender, but also the comptroller of the local airship hangar. "It's not busy enough to be worth manning the hangar all day," she explained, "but the next airship outs to Reykjavik. Just tell them Opique sent you, and they'll find you a berth if you can afford it." I hurried back to my master to tell him the good news. He was greatly cheered, even managing to eat his meal of dried, salted seal, without launching into a mournful lecture on the virtues of well-boiled haunch of beef. We're already late. I'm sure we could afford to explore a few shows. But we might as well just haul ass to London at this point. Get our disgrace over with. We took cheap passage on a battered old airship headed for Reykjavik, though the captain warned us we would be making a stop to pick up 3 months' worth of ratings from meteorological outposts on the southern tip of Greenland. "I hope they're paying you well," I muttered, shivering at the very thought. The captain shrugged. "Science is good business these days." Famed lunatic Phileas Fogg loses far-fetched wager. Reached the outpost as the blizzard outside intensified. I could barely see the compact buildings through the sleet, and I feared the pilot would miss the tether, and we would simply keep drifting in the winds. The pilot's aim was true, either skill, practice, or luck, and the airship's hook caught the outpost tether on the first try, pulling us into the waiting dock. Goodness, Monsieur Fogg is not doing well. The outpost itself was a barren and cheerless place, apparently manned by a single hardy soul who kept watch over the instruments and recorded meticulous notes. "I would go mad living here. Nobody lives here. It's not fit to be someone's home," the pilot muttered, "just to stop on the way somewhere, even if you're the poor bastard who's hired to stop here for half a year. Speaking of which," the pilot opened an inner door and gestured for me to enter. I stepped through and saw the outline of a man lit by the glow of a bank of instruments. "Bonjour, monsieur," I called cheerfully, and the man gave a start. He turned and fixed me with his disconcertingly pale gray eyes. "Visitors," he sneered with the same disdain another man might say murderers or roaches. "What do you want?" I only thought to introduce myself, I replied stiffly. It seemed courteous to do so. The man exhaled heavily. He brushed a hand through his unruly blonde hair. Please forgive me, my manners have frozen in the blizzard. He offered me a small, desultory smile. I am Vidi Yonikin, keeper of this outpost. Join me for a cup of tea? His smile sent a thrill through me despite his rudeness. Good lord, seemed my body was not in the least offended by his manner. I gave him a slow smile of my own and was gratified when he flushed delicately and looked away. Ah, passepartout, he muttered, handed me a cup of tea. If only we had met in better circumstances. I do feel we could have become friends. And perhaps more than that, I murmured delicately with a lift of my eyebrow. Perhaps, he agreed softly, a hungry look flashing in his gray eyes before they faded into wistful chagrin. Maybe action okay is correct. Maybe it's not so much a consolation BJ as just a BJ. This game proceeds to be more and more interesting. And so we spent a surprisingly pleasant few hours in conversation as the crew refueled the airship. It was with genuine sorrow that I bid him farewell and prepared to embark on the next leg of our frostbitten journey. I fear that Monsieur Fogg will not last this journey. The blizzard was even more howling and wild as the airship departed from the outpost, and I shivered as I thought of the distance we had yet to travel. We drifted across the top of the world in relative silence. Below, wars were fought, hearts broken, curses uttered, lives began and ended, but all we saw were the cresting waves and the endless drifting ice. I tried to iron my master's shirts, but could not get the iron hot enough for long enough. My master paced the narrow decks and said nothing. After so long, we were all but home. How small London would seem when we finally arrived, now that we had seen the world from this lofty height. The weather cleared as we neared our destination. The water of Faxifloy Bay shone an impossibly bright blue underneath us as the low, colorful buildings of Reykjavik swept along the curve of the shoreline. The past few days of tumult and blizzard seemed almost a dream. Suppose we'll explore a bit. And thus we find our route back to London. Reykjavik was a quiet town with few inhabitants, but still had the feeling of a bustling center of commerce. We did not explore far, however, contenting ourselves to establish the departure times of the airship to London, and then settling down to a fine meal. It was with a heavy heart that I watched the sun go down. 80 days had come and gone, and here we were, still making time and not yet home. Before retiring, my serious concerns about Monsieur Fogg made me seek out a doctor. He took my master's blood pressure and checked his tongue. A rush of blood to the head. I would say 4 days to recover full strength. There was no alternative. I kept my master to his bed, a terrible wait. But after 4 days, he was at last recovered. $2,000 to leave today. 2,000 pounds, rather, plus 9 pounds to make extra room for our suitcase. Silver Seal was a Gaelic imported from the Ottoman Empire. We loaded up and strapped ourselves in for the launch. Adventurer Fogg expected back shortly. Now, how would they know? The ocean tore along beneath us. I enjoyed talking to no one. There was nothing I needed to know. No one to charm, flatter, or beguile into giving us aid. There was only the wind and the time, and we could control neither. Monsieur Fogg looked out of the observation deck windows with perfect calm, though the wager was lost and he was no doubt ruined. I watched him closely, for fear he might do something drastic. I spent the remaining time ironing, which is a great solace to an uneasy soul. We tethered at the airship dock in Hyde Park and felt for the first time in 91 days the feel of English soil under our shoes. At long last we had returned to London. I hailed one of the steam carriages idling on the banks of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. To the Reform Club, I instructed. My master shook his head. To Savile Row, he corrected calmly, and turned his face to the window. I have most assuredly lost my wager. Soot and fog thickened the yellow light of the gas lamps as we drove through the streets of London. I searched for some words of comfort from my master, but found nothing but platitudes forming themselves on my tongue. I swallowed them down. We had lost the wager, but by an irrefutable margin. Yet I could not help thinking that we had so nearly succeeded. I resisted the urge to seize Monsieur Fogg's ledger to calculate a better route, to scrub out some of our mistakes and snatch back our victory one day at a time. My master entered his domicile with his habitual tranquility, though he instructed me to leave the windows shut up so that his neighbors would not mark his return. I prepared his supper and he ate heartily, as if he were not utterly ruined. Passepartout, he began. Yes, Monsieur Fogg? His silence had followed, I counted up. Vast sums expended, all the obstacles which we had overcome and those which had delayed us. As a valet you have been of indifferent use to me, Passepartout, he said, as though remarking upon the weather. More importantly, you circumnavigated the globe as my companion. Despite the unfortunate protraction of our journey, he added, it was no small feat. Oh, monsieur, you're ruined, ruined! I wrung my hands and paced up and down. What shall become of us? My course, Passepartout, Monsieur Fogg interjected smoothly, is fully decided upon. I must attempt the journey around the world once more. Once more, I cried. Indeed, Monsieur Fogg said implacably, an intent light glinting in his cold blue eyes. But this time, forewarned and better prepared, we will succeed. Yes, monsieur, I nodded smartly. Glad I had not bothered to unpack our cases. Monsieur Fogg consulted his ledger and tapped his pen. Perhaps this time, he said thoughtfully, a more northerly route. Adventure Phileas Fogg loses wager. Fogg blames airlift by pirates in Europe, sinking airship off the coast of Singapore, and balloon crash off coast of Australia for 91-day journey. And thus, our journey comes to a close. Hello, Kira. Did you come to say congratulations? And thus, my final alarm has gone off. Happy New Year to the West Coast of America. Happy New Year to California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and everybody else out there. Happy New Year to everybody watching wherever you may be. All 4 of you, and whoever may watch in future. I know I had a very interesting time. I hope you did as well. I hope you found this game somewhat intriguing, and I would definitely invite you to check it out yourself sometime. If you have a PC and feel like checking out an interesting little indie game based on a classic novel. So with that said, once more, Happy New Year. I'm going to go ahead and close everything out here. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you all had a wonderful time. I hope you all will have a fantastic evening, a fantastic 2018, and I will see you next time.